Welcome to Iowa City Community School District School Board meeting on Tuesday, December 13th. My name is Chris Lynch. I call this meeting to order. I'd like to thank those in the public and those on TV for taking an interest in our district business. I'd like to start tonight by introducing those at the table with me here tonight. To my right is Superintendent Steve Murley and Directors Lori Rowland, Phil Hemingway, Brian Kersling, Natasha Deloche, Paul Rosler, Chris Liebig, and Recording Secretary Kim Colvin. The public is reminded if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form found at the table in the lobby and turn it in. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting during the community comment section of the agenda. Tonight we have a very full agenda. I think there's 20 agenda items. And then 5 items on the work session. We hope to get to them all, so to do that, we'll have to keep it moving. And I'll do my best to do that. And with that, we'd like to start with the first topic, All-State Music Reception. I'll hand it off to Bill Pringle.
Guess I don't know if I look at you or look at them. Well, good evening. I want to thank the board for allowing us this opportunity to recognize our academic and extracurricular excellence here in the Iowa City Community School District. First of all, my name is Bill Pringle. I'm the performance music coordinator. I teach at Southeast Junior High. I've taught in the district for 19 years and just excited every year to be a part of the district music. I want to start off first of all by thanking and recognizing my peers, my cohorts that I teach with. This all-state achievement or any of our musical achievements, a lot of this is done before and after school. A lot of these teachers go way above and beyond the call of duty to mentor and work with kids and help them achieve these great successes that they do. And I also want to congratulate the kids for this high achievement. This is the highest achievement that students can receive in the state of Iowa. Across the state, 17% of the kids that try out for All-State make it. In the Iowa City School District, 60% of the kids that try out for All-State make the top band. Every year, for many years, we generally have, if not the most in the state, right near the top. I believe this year that, once again, West High has the most All-Staters in the state. I think City High is in the top 5, and you combine them, there's no community or school district that even comes close. So appreciate all the support from parents, the private teachers, the district teachers, and the school board. And without further ado, we're going to bring in the City High vocal All-Staters first, Mr. James Thompson.
I'd like to start with Adelaide Bass, an alto, accepted for her first year. And Kyle Irish Gorvin, a tenor, first year. Molly Lou, soprano, third year. Emma Myers-Verhage, alto, first year. Frederick Ogilvie, bass, first year. Tenor, first year. Cassidy Slater Scott, alto, first year. Danielle Tang, alto, third year.
Next, we have the West High Choir. And I think those of you that don't recognize him, Mr. Rob Med is going to introduce. He hasn't changed jobs, but the West High Choir has a concert tonight, so many of these kids are going to get introduced and then head right over the west, either that or to the basketball game, one of the two things. I can.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, they have a concert, and so that's where the directors are. And since they, with that concert, they have some rehearsal happening for some of the students. So a number of them from the West High Choir are not able to be here tonight, so we apologize for that. So I'm going to read the names. I can't see who all is outside the door there, so I'll read the names, and we'll hold the applause until I get to the end of all 23 names. Nathan Armstrong on bass, Quinn Baker on bass, Brandon Burkhart, a tenor, Carissa Burkhart, who is here, soprano, Abby Callahan, alto, Eric Cargan, bass, Andrea Childs, alto, Alyssa Clark, a soprano, Christina Dye, soprano, Julia Fink, a soprano, Alex Granfield, a tenor, Olivia Manalagood, an alternate, Mary Mondanero is a soprano, Yuka Niki is an alto, Rio Ohashi, a bass, Lucy Polyak, an alto, Ella Schmitz, another alto, and Eric Smith is here, a bass. Max Sunderland, a bass, and Sam Sunderland, a tenor. Kate Vanderleest, an alto. Joseph Very, a tenor. Julie Watkins, a soprano. And the last one, Robert Weiss, a tenor. These are the West High Choir All-Staters for this year.
As the City High Orchestra starts to make their way in here, just real briefly, for those of you that aren't familiar, when somebody's named as an alternate, in each center in Iowa, for example, they take 2 alto saxophones in our center. Sometimes there's 4 kids that are what we would call all-state worthy. They have the talent, but there's only 2 spots that they can award it to. So the judges will say, you know, they'll list them as an alternate, meaning they are all-state caliber. And if another district doesn't fulfill their quota, then our kids can go over and still play in the all-state band or choir or orchestra. So, City High Orchestra.
Good evening. My name is Megan Stuckey, and I'm the director of the City High Orchestra. And I'd like to introduce our All-Staters. Michael Berg, cello. He's our 4-year All-Stater. Emmy Bergman Corbett is on bass, not here today. Phoebe Chapnick-Sorokin, violin, 1st year. Sasha Chapnick-Sorokin, violin. This is her 3rd year and 1-year alternate, so we're going to say 4. Joseph Ellis, he made it for alternate in cello, who's not here today. Marav Flate, alternate viola. Elise Heck, cello, 1 year. Maya Jansen, violin, 1 year. Nova Maurice, 4-year All-State viola. Max Meyer, who is not here today. James Momberg, viola, 2nd year. Levi Pugh made it in the orchestra this year on piano, his 1st year. John Paul Rethbush, alternate. Oriana Ross, 2nd year violin. Annalise Rummelhart, 1st year violin. Esme Rummelhart, violin, 3rd year. And Mia Thedens, alternate cello, 1st year.
Next, we'll recognize the West High Orchestra.
Hello, I'm John Welch, the orchestra director of West High, and we'll introduce these students. First, we have Andrew Burgess, second violin. Sasha Shikalikal, cello. Shanti Shikalikal, second violin. Malia Chang, cello. Annie Chen, first violin. Eugenia Chen, first violin. Sophia Chen, first violin. Jennifer Du, second violin. Ewen Gao, second violin. Cole Hansen, string bass. Catherine Ju, cello. Noelle Jung, first violin. Chris Lowe, cello. Ruth Miller, viola. Anna Moses, alternate viola. Nathan Tansey, cello. Cecily Vance, string bass. Henry Wang, second violin. Sasha Wemme, cello. Lily Westemeyer, viola. And Grace Yarrow, first violin.
Save the best part for last, the bands. All right, Myron McReynolds and Ryan Art for the City High Band.
Good evening, everyone. The following students were accepted to the All-State Performance Groups from the City High Band program. Cassandra Birnbaum on oboe, and this is Cassie's third year in All-State. Wade Carter on bass trombone, and this is Wade's second year on All-State. Xian Dong, who is in her third year on flute. Audrey Freestadt, a first-year clarinetist. Max Hostiger, who is accepted as a trumpet alternate. Quinn Koppelman, who is first year on bass clarinet. Charles Mascardo, an alto saxophone alternate. Joey Schneblin, that rarest of breeds, a four-year all-stater. Colby Schneblin, a trombone alternate. Rocio Steskal, who was a first-year clarinetist. Joseph Stoltz, who was a second-year trombonist. Rachel Strang, a second-year horn player. Mina Takahashi, a second-year clarinetist. And Patrick Weiss, a first-year clarinetist.
Again, a lot of time, talent, and effort goes into this endeavor, and I want to thank you all for coming here to help celebrate, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. And next we'll bring out Rob Med again with the West High Band.
Thank you. So, recognizing our West High Band All-Staters, Emily Buck, who was first chair bassoon. Drew Duncan was in All-State last year, is an alternate this year. Thomas Dong on percussion. Laura Fletcher is a senior flute player, second flute this year. She is sick and hopefully at home resting to get better for our concert tomorrow night. Ned Furlong on French horn. Emma Gelbach on clarinet. McKenna Hendrickson, an alternate on clarinet. Kamea Holmes on bassoon in the orchestra. Chad Johnson on alto sax. Junhee Lee on first trumpet. Kevin Liu on first clarinet. James Mons on trumpet. Jeanwoo Suh on flute. Yangtian Shangguan on tenor sax. Nathan Stone on clarinet. David Wang was playing piano with the band this year. Chen Yu Wu on clarinet. And our last one that I'd like to introduce is not only our last, but our 4-year All-Stater in band, Amy Gann. These are our West High Band All-Staters.
Well, thanks again. It's outstanding to see the talent in the Iowa City Community School District and both our staff and our students. And like you said, it's just amazing how much talent this district has. And it's a tribute to the total community. So thank you for coming again tonight.
Thank you.
All right, with that, next item on the agenda is our student representatives. Do we have our West representative tonight?
So a lot has happened since my last student update. Following the presidential election, West saw a rise in hateful rhetoric among the student body, which you may have read about in local media outlets or in the November 20th edition of the New York Times. To combat this, several students formed a group called Students Against Hate and Discrimination. They have led a walkout, hallway sit-in, and a march to an Iowa City Council meeting, as well as attending a school board meeting last month. Their goal is to fulfill their list of demands, one of which was met today. This morning, the entire school viewed a video featuring students delivering an updated version of the district's non-discrimination policy. Aside from that, West has started Pocket Points, a mobile app that promotes students keeping their phone off during school hours. The longer a student keeps their phone off, the more points he or she receives. The points can then be redeemed for a variety of food items at various participating restaurants. So far, a free Chick-fil-A sandwich has proven to be the most coveted prize. Extracurricular-wise, our show choir performed their annual winter swing show at the beautiful New Hampshire Auditorium, and our robotics team received a $2,000 grant from the Herbert Hoover Foundation Library. Our drama department put on a fantastic production of The Wizard of Oz, and our Student Senate and Psych Club are currently doing a canned food drive and winter clothing drive, respectively. After finishing second at state, football coach Garrett Hartwig was named the Des Moines Register Coach of the Year, and senior Oliver Martin was named the Gatorade Player of the Year, the first football player from West to do so since 2004. Finally, both our boys and girls basketball teams face off against City High tonight at home. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Michael. City High, is Lucy here?
Hello, I am the City High Student Body President, Lucy.
And I'm also Lucy. I'm the City High Class Vice President.
Awesome. So in the last month, City High won a pacemaker for our newspaper, which is the only pacemaker one in Iowa, so that's pretty exciting.
In addition, we also won third place Best in Show for this year's edition of Little Hawk. Last night, the City High Orchestra and Choir performed, and it was an amazing show. And on Saturday, December 17th at 3 and 7, our show choir will have their winter show.
Yes, you guys should check it out. To Kill a Mockingbird, our fall play, was selected to be performed at the State Thespian Festival at UNI, and our spring musical will be Guys and Dolls.
City High is also doing a canned food drive, and that has started and it's picking up speed. And we have had stations at multiple Hy-Vee locations. And what we do is we give a flyer out to people that come into Hy-Vee, and we give them recommended items to donate. And so when they are done checking out, they have the option of giving us more cans if they desire.
It's been a hit. Okay, so we started something called the LH Update, which pretty much means that every Friday we have a video go in and everybody during our advisory period sees the video. They've been pretty good, pretty comical, but people seem to enjoy them, so that's good.
And finally, girls basketball tonight against West at West. And girls are ranked number 2 in the state and West is number 5, so we'll see how that goes. And also boys face off against West at West tonight as well.
We were going to have our snowball this past weekend, but due to weather concerns, it got canceled, so we're working on rescheduling that right now, and Mr. Bacon promised that he would personally help us set up for the dance, so we are looking forward to seeing him string some streamers and lights around City High. So yeah.
One question.
Yes.
Can you give us some information on don't you have an improv event coming up?
My improv event?
With teachers.
Yes.
It's going to be students versus teachers in an improv. I'm going to be honest, I don't know much about it, but
yeah, it seems cool.
There's been a lot of posters hung up.
Fundraiser, right?
Yes, but I think it's anybody can come.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Lucy and Lucy. Tate, is Dalen here? Tate, hi. All right, next item on the agenda is the ICA update. Brady?
Hi, President Lynch, Superintendent Murley, directors, thank you for everything that you're doing. November, for many of us, was a tough month, thinking about what might happen at the state legislative level. But when you come here and you see the immense amount of talent that just sort of walked up here, and knowing a lot of those kids from both City and West, what they do musically is just really actually a very small slice of what they do in their life in terms of volunteering and their work in their classroom. It really makes me proud to be a teacher in the district. It's very inspiring to see them. And I'd like to give a shout out because that doesn't happen without a board that's supportive of the fine arts and creates an environment that's supportive of our student endeavors. And I'd also like to give a little bit of a shout out to the elementary teachers, PK all the way up to 8th grade. We see them as secondary students where I teach, but just tremendous work goes on in all of our elementary classrooms. We have passionate people who are very inspirational, so it's fun to see that. It was nice after November to come here and see that. So thanks. You have a busy agenda tonight. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Brady. Next item on the agenda is community comment. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You're reminded to give your name, address, and the topic you wish to speak. During community comments, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker. The initial community comment period shall be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, shall take place at the end of the meeting. To the extent you are commenting on items not on our posted agenda, the board may ask follow-up questions of speakers, but it's prohibited by Iowa open meeting law from responding to questions from speakers or engaging in substantive discussion regarding non-agenda items. And first up is Lou Jane. Jane Hannard. And on deck will be Jennifer Babcock.
Hi, my name is Lujane Hamad again, and I'm a junior at West High.
Hi, I'm Jade Merriweather. I'm a senior at West High, and we're both representatives of Students Against Hate and Discrimination.
Yeah, we didn't fill up the room in the back today because we felt that we had gotten the message across, what we were trying to get. And for anyone who doesn't know, SOD is Students Against Hate and Discrimination, and we're just fighting discrimination that we have been facing in our schools recently. And so we have seen the support that you guys have been giving us, and it's very encouraging. It's helped us move on as students and become like a stronger community. And we feel that you have done a lot on your end, like officially supporting us with your statement, and it has the statement we made today, the schools made today in the morning, has also made us feel a little bit more at comfort. And we would just like to thank you and for doing that. Some of our immediate demands have been met also, which is huge for us because it makes us feel a lot more comfortable at our school environment and a little bit more safe, which is our goal at the end of the day.
Yeah, so like Lou Jane said, we want to recognize the emphasis on the anti-discrimination policy that's already in place, and I think it was really successful what happened today at school with the video and showing it to the student body. So now at this point, we're all on the same page. I think we made our message pretty clear, so we'd like to address some ways that we can move forward with not only resolving the issues that have already occurred, but preventing new issues. So the first thing we've kind of been working towards since everything that's been going on is student-led workshops, which would be designed to educate students on anti-discrimination. And we've been working closely with Kingsley and with designing that program and making sure that it covers all the bases as far as education and prevention and ways to get support. So we'd just like to inform you guys about that and try to get you on board as well so that we can collaborate and keep the communication open about that. We also, that's kind of another long-term goal is integrating, when we mentioned this last meeting, but we like to propose a class, like a diversity and ethics class that's integrated into our curriculum so that we can start moving towards sustained change, because that's kind of where we're at right now.
And lastly, we would also like to have a discussion with you, as students and adults. We would like to talk to you about how you plan on moving forward and how you plan on incorporating us into this, because our last sustained change demand was that we would like to be a part of the change, part of the reconstruction, and we would like to, if possible, have a meeting with you guys or discuss with you guys how you plan on incorporating us, because as I said before, students get students, and I feel like the message will only be sent as if we are leading the message with you behind us, you supporting us. Thank you.
Great.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Clarifying question.
Is the video suffice for the assembly that you requested in your original demands?
So the video was.
So is the video? It looks like the video is being in place of an assembly. Is that all right? Because it's a part of you all demands to have an assembly.
Right.
So do you all feel like the video is getting at what you asked for in your initial demands?
I mean, I think it's the tip of the iceberg. I feel like moving towards sustained change would involve having assemblies and actually meeting as a student body. So it doesn't replace the assembly, but it's a good starting point, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah, the video was very positive, and it was like there was a lot of music in the background, and it seemed very happy. We feel we need to have like a serious discussion, like diving deep into this, and we still feel that an assembly is necessary for that.
Point of clarification. So our conversation, I don't know, was it Wednesday last week, I think talked about the assembly piece and trying to ensure that from a student-led standpoint, that had a component of that as well. And so even though there's the piece about the initial students or assembly and having that discussion from a broader perspective was changed to the video, there's still some thought as far as making that assembly piece a part of that student-led workshop. So whenever this is scheduled, as far as maybe a work session with the board, we can talk about kind of the next steps and some of those thoughts behind that as well.
One more quick question. Can you send us your contact information?
Yeah.
Just board@iowicityschools.org is our email address.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
The update. Thank you. Jennifer? And then on deck will be Eric Vigil.
I'm Jennifer Babcock. I live at 190 East Jefferson Street in North Liberty, and I have 2 fifth graders at Penn Elementary. At your last meeting, our biggest stakeholders, the students, spoke to you about the hate, discrimination, and bullying they've experienced in the district and what was needed for change. They covered a large range of experiences. I was not surprised by what they said. I admired their courage to stand in front of you and speak up. One thing I needed to hear more about was the disability discrimination that is so prevalent in our district. Last spring, the ICCSD was investigated by the State Board of Education for reports of not following individualized education plans Media reported that the district was careless with special education student files that were found at the local recycling center, and we heard word of much-loved homeless liaison losing their position in the district under questionable circumstances. The year before, I learned that many paraeducators' jobs were put in jeopardy due to adding bus monitor work to their duties. That same year, I learned that paraeducators make less than janitors in our district. Recently, there has been awareness being brought out about the use of isolation boxes within the schools. I am sure that none of you would admit that any of these things are discriminatory towards the disabled, but they absolutely all are. All of these experiences are connected to disability, and all of them set the tone for discrimination of those with disabilities in our district. Whether the disability is evident by looking at the student or invisible to your eye, discrimination still affects them. We must also keep in mind that students with disability often go undiagnosed, misdiagnosed, as well as just misunderstood. Disability discrimination is a real thing, though most would deny it. In our most recent political arena, we saw that discrimination in blatant words and actions. But more so, this discrimination happens under the radar and is more insidious. It happens when a school principal discourages parents from seeking an evaluation from Grant Wood for their child. It happens when a school principal blames the child's parents for the child's challenges without first excluding all other possibilities. It happens when teachers present intolerance for those with differences in learning needs and styles or social and emotional capabilities. It happens when teachers and principals tell disabled kids to ignore it, when they are targeted, teased, and bullied for their differences. It happens when school staff say a diagnosed child is doing it for attention, when the child is struggling every day. It happens when we put children in boxes to deal with them instead of demanding the adequate staff and space to support them in more inclusive ways. It happens when we neglect to upgrade some schools with disability access and supports and instead use that money to upgrade other schools with better athletic turf or technology for the most privileged. It happens when we don't provide enough school counselors, nurses, and paraeducators to support disabled students in their schools. It happens when IEPs and 504 plans are not followed. It happens when bullying of these students gets treated as the same thing as bullying of non-disabled students. It happens when parents of disabled students in the district are targeted, hushed, and retaliated against for speaking up. It happens in the everyday ableist language perpetuated by conformity. There are many other ways this discrimination exists in this district. These are the ones that are forefront in my mind. Unlike the students that were here 2 weeks ago, I'm not going to demand tolerance. Tolerance and inclusion of all students, but especially those with disabilities, are a given, no matter what your opinion is. It is against the law to place barriers to learning for disabled students. They are entitled to a free and appropriate public education under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
Thanks. Thanks, Jennifer.
Jennifer, could you give us the remainder of your speech so we can get just provide it to us and I can share it with the rest of thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Eric? Next up will be Susan Brennan.
My name's Eric Vigil. I live at 445 Galway Drive in Iowa City. I'd like to talk to the board about chess and the accomplishments of this school district in local, national, and international competitions. Chess accomplishments this year, Northwest Junior High went to national competition, Junior High Nationals in Indianapolis, Indiana. We won 7th in the nation. It's a pretty good accomplishment. Last year, in 2015, the state of Iowa sent 3 individuals, a high school champion, junior high champion, and a girls champion, to the U.S. Open to compete against all the other 50 states. Well, 52 if you include Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. We came in 17th out of 50. Iowa's 31st in population. We did really good. I would also like to say that all 3 representatives from Iowa were from the Iowa City Community School District. Last year, we sent Arshak Salim as the under-16 U.S. champion to the world in Greece. 8 years ago, we sent an elementary team from Weber, and we got third in the world. Many of us do not know of chess is pretty quiet. You know, in basketball, you have the Final Four. Hockey, you've got the Frozen Four. In college, in chess, you have the quiet four. A lot of chess accomplishments go rather unrecognized. We have a large group. Most schools, elementary schools in the Iowa City School District have a chess club. We have put together ourselves. I've gone to the state school sports commission and asked to have chess included as a state sport as it is in other other states. Illinois, chess is a state sport. Each school, they send all the chess teams from all the high schools together, and they have a wonderful competition. In Iowa, it's not a state sport. I went to the sports commission, and they said, you know, it's not a girl sport, it's not a boy sport. And that's where I got stymied. But anyway, the school chess community runs, and I am the chess club director of the Weber and the Borlaug chess clubs. We have held the Weber Borlaug chess tournament for over a decade. This tournament is free. We would like to keep it free. We have been given great support from the school district in letting us use either the Weber or the Borlaug gym for use in this tournament. This year, when I submitted my application for the gym through my principal, I was told that we would have to pay $40 an hour for the gym space, which, in my mind, we've been doing this for the last decade, and I'd like to keep it free. We get donations for the trophies and the equipment we use from the chess clubs that I run, and we also run other tournaments that do charge a fee, but we'd like to keep this tournament in particular, like to keep free for the students of the Iowa City School District. I would like the board to help me continue doing this. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Susan? Next up will be Aaron Kaufman.
Good evening. It's been a while since I've seen you, so it's nice to see you all. Happy birthday, Brian.
Oh, jeez. Thursday, if it's any consolation.
It was yesterday? Yours is Thursday?
Yes.
Happy birthday, Phil. We're here to celebrate the Run for the Schools. And before I ask some of the board members from the Iowa City Road Races to come up, I'm sure you guys all know this. This race is put on by a group of people who love to run, and they do it for the sole benefit of our schools. It is a huge, huge undertaking, and it is really just for our benefit, the schools. And so I'm exceptionally grateful for this group. I get to sit on the board and be a part of the planning process. They started the next year's race in November, after last year's race in October. So we're already ramping up for next year. So huge undertaking that I want to say thank you. Several members of the Iowa City Road Races Board are here with us to celebrate and to do a check presentation that we're going to want to grab a picture. So I'd like to have them come up and join me if I could. And speaking on behalf of the board is Bob Opliger.
Good evening. I'm late for my next meeting, so I'm going to be short. We're pleased again to provide a record amount of money to the school districts. This year, the race raised over $43,000, and with Susan's effort, the foundation raised another $25,000. So between the two groups, we now have another record of almost $69,000 coming to the school district. One of the things that I'm especially pleased about is that we give out participation awards to the various schools if they recruit enough volunteers or runners in the race. All but one school got a piece of the pie. We handed out another record, $9,300 to the various school districts in the district. Just very quick, and there were 1,700 people who had designated a school building either as a volunteer or a participant. And just a really quick vignette of one of the other side of benefits of this happens at Grant Wood School, where they've had typically the last 2 or 3 the most volunteers of any building in the district. And that's largely because of one of their 5th grade teachers, Kathy Bargo, who has taken it upon themselves her class has taken it upon themselves to fill out the no parking signs, the 1,000 or so no parking signs that go out around the course every year. And I don't know if she tells them, but they don't seem to know when I come in with the checks that will go to the PE teacher and the media center that there's money involved. And so we give the checks to the kids, and of course getting checks for a couple $100 to a 5th grader is a pretty exciting event. And then they get to go give them to the Mrs. Granco in the media center. And then one of the third benefits of that is that the media center has come up with the idea that these students should be allowed to pick some of the things that the $100 or $150 will be spent on. So these students go from volunteering time to figuring out what that means to the school to participating in how that is played out in the actual media center. So I think that's a really neat way to use this race for something other than running around Iowa City. So without further ado, I guess we've got, let me see here, we've got the woman with the money is our treasurer. We have Joe Dwyer, who's the race director. We have Jim Tiedemann, who's been the chairman of the committee for the last few years and is now retiring. We have Matt, who's our operations vice president. And we have $43,000 for you.
Yep. All right, Aaron's up next. And on deck is Jesse Witherthal.
Hi, my name is Erin Kaufman. I live at 420 2nd Avenue. I'm here to talk about the closure of Hoover Elementary School. I understand that as the board makes progress on possible bond language, you may also begin considering contingent plans should the bond not pass. The bond does, after all, require a supermajority to pass, and at the state level at least, this is an historically unprecedented amount of money to ask the public for. There have been murmurs throughout the Hoover community that the board may consider closing Hoover a year early should the bond fail. This possibility has been confirmed by one board member who's told me he cannot imagine how Hoover can stay open until 2019 should the bond not pass. I would like to encourage the board to reject any consideration of moving Hoover's closure up by a year. Please remember that the Hoover closure has been and still is a deeply unpopular decision. Just last year, when community members were asked to canvass their neighborhoods to determine their preferred elementary school, 343 people chose Hoover as their first choice, even though it was not given as an option. Even the Thought Exchange report, which you will review tonight, has identified neighborhood schools as a top theme. Plans to move the closure up a year, even closer to the bond vote, and contrary to what the Hoover community has been told would happen, may inadvertently achieve the very thing that you are hoping to avoid, which is endangering the bond. Moving the Hoover closure up a year assumes that the capacity needs of the east side of Iowa City will be met without Hoover seats, as well as without the elementary additions that are contingent upon the bond passage. It's interesting that the district would not need all of the built capacity it already has in order to make up for seats lost should the bond unfortunately not pass. In fact, in difficult financial times, which the district will soon likely face, it makes little sense to destroy what capacity we already have. The email exchange I had with a board member about an early closure came before enrollment projections were released to the public. This suggests that conversations about closing Hoover early may have been happening before evidence suggesting its possible need or even feasibility became available. As has been the case with the Hoover closure again and again, we start with the conclusion, then try to backfill the steps needed to achieve it. You may soon be in a position to ask the community for a huge amount of money. Public confidence in the district's ability to make wise decisions in a transparent and fiscally responsible manner is going to be key for you to reach that 60% yes vote you're going to need. I would encourage you to avoid directions like talk of the early closure of Hoover that would give the public any reason to vote no on what you're planning and hoping to accomplish. Thanks.
Thanks, Erin. Jesse? On deck would be Natalie Cruden.
Members of the board, my name is Jessie Witherell, 1241 East Burlington Street. I'd like to challenge the district to re-examine its use of restraint and seclusion in its current form. I think that only positive things can come from really taking a good look at our policy, the spaces we use to confine some of our students in crisis, and really striving for what is best practice in redirecting behavior. I understand that our seclusion rooms or timeout rooms are an attempt to mainstream and support children who might otherwise be expelled or sent to specialized schools. Having a safe and nearby place to escort a child in crisis is essential. Some children do suffer from trauma and do have profound neurological differences that make them at times unable to control their anger and cause them to physically harm the property and people around them. We need to have a plan for them, but it has to be done with care and compassion. I have to wonder if some of the rooms we have in place are really best practices. Has the district narrowed their focus so much on keeping students and teachers physically safe that we have overlooked the essential component of psychological safety? What message does a room that looks like this, that looks like a box, send to both a student and a teacher? Does it foster feelings of calm, promote a sense of safety between child and educator, and serve as a tool for processing and redirecting intense emotions? Or does it foster feelings of punishment, isolate a student emotionally, and serve a more punitive purpose than one of safety? There's no need for our rooms to have a black and empty interior, have windows that are too high to be seen out of, be lined with recycled tires that create an odor that would overwhelm a child with sensory issues, or to be fully enclosed like a cell. There are better, more humane options that are used elsewhere. State law allows for this one. I had a better copy, but accidentally got thrown out, so I'll pass this around if you guys want. This is HandyCare, a local therapeutic child care facility that our own district partners with. This room is more open, is brightly lit, and has brighter colors, and allows for a child to be both emotionally and physically safe. There's a reason why some of the rooms in our district cause many of us as adults to respond with disbelief and fear. The children being placed in these rooms are not sad cases. There's no need for us to, as a district, to say, seclusion is a sad thing, and we have to do it sometimes. We should be proud of how everything in our behavior classrooms look and feel. We should be just as proud of them as any of our other accomplishments. Our district has an obligation to uphold dignity and respect for all children, even those who may act out or behave in ways that are challenging or misunderstood to us. There is no either or here. We can do both. The board has the power to create a policy that other districts in our state can look to as the best. It was explained to me by Grant Wood that the gray areas in our district guidelines were intentionally there to uphold the individual and idea, leaving things up to individual education teams and schools to decide what was best for students. However, those gray areas can also unintentionally leave room for implicit bias and possible misuse. This truly is an equity issue. We trust educators to guide our children through their most frustrating moments and never lose sight of the fact that they are human beings whose full set of human rights should always be respected. But teachers are also human beings who need to have the proper tools in place to handle situations that can be threatening or disruptive. Even if a parent approves of the use of these rooms for the children, are they truly informed of what timeout means? And is it really the right answer for the children? We need policies that we can be proud of, not ones that we are constantly scrambling to defend. We should be a model for the rest of the state. This is Iowa City, and we can do better. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jesse. Natalie? Natalie Cruden? And on deck is Heather Young.
I'm Natalie Cruden, 234 South Lowell Street. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I had written a comment about the Clear Creek, Amana, and Solon school districts because they do not use seclusion and they have some great working alternatives. And this morning I was thinking about it and I realized that I feel like sometimes our autism community is speaking a different language from the general public. And so I think that the time would be better spent speaking about autism and just giving you an idea of what some of the language means to us, even though it sounds like English. If seclusion is primarily for kids with IEPs who have severe behavior issues, this mainly has to do with kids on the spectrum. Autism is diagnosed through meeting criteria set out in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. It's not a mental illness, and it's not a mental disorder. It's not a disease. There is no cure. It's a physical condition of being. The brains of autistic people are wired differently. They have different neural networks, just as your brains are all wired a little differently from each other. The group of behavior issues that we identify as autistic are mainly issues individuals have with communicating and socializing. These are traits that we highly value in the USA. I was talking with a man from Nepal a few weeks ago, and he said that in Nepal, no one has autism. Over there, everyone is accepted as they are. Quirks, obsessions, social awkwardness, to them, it's just part of the human condition. In the USA, these types of social challenges make us uncomfortable. And people who navigate the social waters well are generally more successful than those of us who don't. Here, people are rewarded for being really good with the social aspects of life. Part of the push to get services for our children early is to give them as many social and communication tools as possible so that they'll be able to work in our society without making other people uncomfortable. I hope that this will become a non-issue as more and more kids grow up with autistic kids in their classrooms. One problem that we have with the seclusion boxes is that they help perpetuate and even strengthen the misperception that autistic people are violent. Yes, some people on the spectrum have extremely violent meltdowns. Other people on the spectrum don't have meltdowns at all. There are gentle autistic people, just as there are violent and aggressive neurotypical people. I think if more people understood the difference between meltdowns and tantrums, that would be helpful to everyone. A tantrum happens when a child does their best to get something they really want. It's manipulative. They're capable of stopping when their desire is met. Obviously, at some point they give up, or their parents give in, or they fall asleep, or whatever. They're basically in control of what they are doing, physically and mentally. A meltdown may look like a tantrum on steroids, but it's different. In meltdowns, the people involved are out of control. They are reacting to issues beyond their control in their environment. So probably the most common cause of a meltdown is sensory overload. There are a lot of different causes, but that's the most common one in the classrooms. Often people on the spectrum process sensory input differently from neurotypical people. We all have sensory things that bother us, like certain fabrics make us itchy or certain odors make us gag. And these are examples of some typical reactions to sensory input. Autistic sensory input can be much more extreme and even debilitating. If the person is nonverbal, as about 50% on the spectrum are, or has trouble communicating in whatever mode they are accustomed to when they get overwhelmed, when they have a meltdown, the bystanders may have no idea why. Ideally, people realize they are starting to have trouble regulating themselves and can remove themselves from the sensory input. And part of the IEPs map out this way of dealing, and this is why parental input is so important. Kids who are melting down don't want to melt down. My understanding is that this is terrifying and can feel extremely shameful. As I understand it, they are completely out of control and they cannot just stop when they want. So when given the option of staying in the classroom with their peers or going to a seclusion box, they choose privacy. We are asking that there be a new option, a place that is private but also nurturing and safe.
Thanks, Natalie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Heather? Is Heather Young here? Oh, sorry. See ya. Katarina Litchfield, are we on deck?
My name is Heather Young. I live at 502 3rd Avenue. What part of this seclusion box looks like a 21st century learning environment to you? District administrators insist calling this a timeout room. The U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights defines timeout as a behavior management technique that is part of an approved program, involves the monitored separation of the student in a non-locked setting, and is implemented for the purpose of calming. This is a dark, smelly box, which I found out today is not lined with recycled tires. It's actually lined with livestock padding. This is a barn. This is what students are locked into. We consider this a 21st century learning environment. While serving as the U.S. Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan stated, as many reports have documented, the use of restraint and seclusion have very serious consequences, including, most tragically, death. Furthermore, there continues to be no evidence that using restraint or seclusion is effective in reducing the occurrence of the problem behaviors that frequently participate the use of such techniques. Iowa State Chapter 103 explicitly states that school boards may adopt policies and procedures regarding the use of physical confinement and detention, or both, that exceed the minimum requirements contained in this chapter. That means you have the power to decide if this district will continue using these boxes or not. The United States Department of Education, the National Association of School Psychologists, the American Association of School Administrators, the National Association of School Nurses, the National Association of State Mental Health Directors, the American Psychological Association, and many other professional associations all agree seclusion boxes are harmful and should not be in public schools. In fact, I couldn't find even one professional association that thinks that these are positive. Keep in mind that according to Iowa state law, it is your decision to make, not the administration's. We're not talking only about special education children. In 2013-14, the district reported that 23 non-special education black children were put in these boxes. No white children, only black children, without IEPs. This is what the school-to-prison pipeline looks like. Members of this community have a right to know where each of you as board members stand in regards to the use of seclusion boxes. During the discussion regarding seclusion boxes in tonight's work meeting, we expect each of you to take a position, either for the continuation of abuse and harm for the students of this district, or for a humane 21st century approach to educating all children of Iowa City. The choice as board members is yours and yours alone. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Katrina? Amanda Van Horn will be next.
My name is Katharina Litchfield. I live at 625 Emily Street, North Liberty, and I'm a parent in this district. There currently exists no federal policy concerning the regulation of seclusion in schools. The issue is complicated. It centers on a core concern for safety, and most voices in the conversation share the good intention of serving every student in the best, most supportive fashion possible. We can all agree that supporting children who display violence in the classroom is a challenging issue. The Iowa Code, as a response to previous legal cases of proven child abuse, has implemented a basic policy of seclusion box construction and practice. Chapter 103 outlines the most basic physical requirements. This is the first legal step the state has taken in protecting the rights of children to a free, equitable, and supportive education. At the same time, the U.S. Department of Education has issued a document titled Restraint and Seclusion Resource Document. I have the URL link here, and I'd like to provide that with you afterwards. While not law, the document makes a strong argument for limiting the use of seclusion under most circumstances. It recommends a strong focus on Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports, PBIS. The publication is an important resource for school boards and administrations who are empowered to design appropriate best practices. My concern with the FAQ provided to the community parents is its reliance on the basic bare minimum requirements to avoid litigation as a standard rubric for providing safe spaces in the schools. Chapter 103 does not describe best practices, but rather holds the bar just above child abuse. By following these requirements to the letter, we are towing the line between policy compliance and corporal punishment, which is illegal in the state of Iowa. The accessibility of these boxes in the center of the classroom make inappropriate use too easy, and they impact the healthy learning environment of every student in the classroom, not just the student in seclusion. I have deep concerns about racial disparities in our district with concern toward the use of seclusion. I'm also concerned that the use of the term timeout is misleading to parents and restricts our ability to consider other alternatives for dealing with violent behavior. A true timeout should be an opportunity for a student to remove themselves from a stressful environment, not to be coerced into an additional stressful environment. The boxes in Grant Wood are not timeouts. They are tools of seclusion, and the district needs to honor the difference. District policy should restrict the use of seclusion to emergencies in which a child's behavior poses an imminent threat of physical harm to the child or others, with a district goal of removing seclusion completely. We can do better than offering the lowest bar above child abuse for our most vulnerable students. We can use evidence-based best practices vetted and recommended by the U.S. Department of Education and guide Iowa and the nation toward federal policies that will one day not only protect children from dangerous school practices, but use evidence-based best practices as the standard from which we design our behavior management strategies. I'm asking the board to consider doing these things. 1, please research and determine the appropriate use of the terms timeout and seclusion. Page 10 of the restraint and seclusion document is a good place to start. 2, ground your behavior management strategy in a framework of prevention, like PBIS, and not reaction. 3, remove the plywood boxes at Grant Wood before you face litigation. Consider the harm they have already inflicted on students, regardless of what is allowable by the policy.
Thanks, Katrina. Amanda? Then will be Erica Merriweather.
My name is Amanda Van Horn. I live at 1722 Ridgeway Drive. I'm a citizen living in the district. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, so I'm not yet a parent in this district. I'm also a faculty member in the Communication Disorders Department, so I study and work with children with language impairment. I've been following the topic of seclusion rooms primarily through the newspaper, and every piece of information that I hear makes me more concerned about this practice. There are multiple concerns. First, the racial bias in the deployment of this discipline strategy is striking. The most recently available federal data show that all of the children placed in the spaces who don't have an IEP are Black, at a time when 18% of our district was Black. Of those who do have an IEP, approximately half were either Black or 2 Asian students, and approximately half were white. This is concerning. Second, the use of seclusion rooms and restraints as a discipline strategy is recommended against by the U.S. Department of Education because, as we already heard, it's a dangerous tactic, potentially leading to child harm, including death. Finally, the Department of Education reports that the use of seclusion rooms is an ineffective strategy. It has no evidence that it's effective in reducing the occurrence of the problem behaviors that frequently precipitate the use of such techniques. So Iowa City Community School District, a high-quality school district, is engaged in discipline practice that is dangerous, ineffective, and deployed in a racially biased manner. I find myself asking why. And the only conclusion that I can come to is that the teachers and other professionals in the district feel that they have no choice, or that these professionals lack training in alternative discipline tactics. I'd like to ask for training rather than specific changes in facility. I think specific changes in facility practices are needed, but I think training is the more important point. I know that ICCSD engages in PBIS, or Positive Behavior Intervention Supports, as their primary discipline approach for the majority of students. As PBIS is a response to intervention approach with at least 3 tiers. Tier 1 is the Tickets for Good Behavior and Clear Expectations approaches used that work with 80 to 90% of the students. And my understanding is that our school district, like most school districts, began with Tier 1 supports, but has only deployed Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports in a few select schools. I may be mistaken about that. I couldn't find firm information about that, but that's my current understanding. I urge you to consider deployment of Tier 2 and Tier 3 strategies in all schools, particularly those that are relying on seclusion boxes, and to actively train all professionals who come in contact with children. As an RTI approach, PBIS Tier 2 and Tier 3 programs target the 5 to 15% of children that don't respond to the universal supports. These tiers include a series of strategies that can be tailored to individual children, and they include things like identifying triggering events, replacing negative behaviors with positive behaviors, and within this approach, seclusion is actively defined as not a discipline strategy, as only a safety strategy. Rather, individual behavior plans, strategies like check-in, check-out, social stories, and conflict resolution skills are considered appropriate strategies that lead to ongoing behavioral changes instead of simply serving as punishment in the moment. PBIS is an evidence-based program that requires training and buy-in from all staff. Training and strategies that go beyond Tier 1 should be provided to any staff member who works with students at risk of being placed in these seclusion rooms. We are an outstanding school district. I think we should put in place solutions that support the right of all children to obtain an appropriate education and promote the personhood of every individual child, regardless of disability or race. The district should engage a consultant and increase training on PBIS, particularly Tier 2s and Tier 3s, to reduce and eliminate the need for the use of seclusion and restraint and eliminate the need for the rooms in these schools.
Thanks. Thanks, Amanda. Erica?
Good evening, everyone, esteemed members of the board. I, first of all, want to preface my comments by saying I am extraordinarily proud of the students and their voices on the school climate issue. And as a member of the community and as a parent of one of these students, I'd like to follow up a bit with their sustained demands. And as we move forward with discussions on school climate and meeting said demands, I would encourage the board to consider demanding, asking first, demanding if necessary, transparency in how claims of discrimination or complaints of discrimination are handled. I think that it is embedded deep within newsletters, at least at the secondary level. I don't know how many people know or have access to these policies at the elementary levels. And so as we move forward in the discussion about school climate, which a lot of this discussion around seclusion boxes seems to fit in this, I think we need to ask for transparency as to how these incidents, particularly of hate crimes, are investigated, or hate speech, or anything related to discrimination in the schools. And so the last thing I want to say is I would hope that statements made related to treating these things as not hate crimes. When you touch somebody, that is a crime. If you attach discrimination to it, it is a hate crime. And if we were outside of the confines of the school community, the perpetrator would be summarily arrested. So there's a level of education surrounding that, and change the narrative about surrounding, well, this is a learning opportunity and all of that. Yes, it is, but it re-victimizes the victims, is condescending and dismissive and morally reprehensible, so and irresponsible. And so I would encourage you, as you move forward, to ask your administrators to walk you through how they handle instances of discrimination and disseminate that to the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. That's it for community comment tonight. Next item on the agenda, and again, we're going to try to keep things moving, is the business consent agenda.
Yeah, I'd like to
pull I'd like to pull item 9.
All right, how about you make a motion?
I make a motion to pull item 9 from the consent agenda
How about,
and approve the balance.
is there a second? Who did the bills? Oh, Natasha, it's all good?
That's fine.
Went through there, like I say, there's some things we'll discuss at a later date, but
All right, Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim. I'm going to keep things moving. Support for student and families, and again, we'll separate where action's required, action's not required, but I think, Steve, you're going to provide an update and start here.
Yeah, actually, I was going to have Amy and Matt do that. Amy's out sick tonight, so Amy and Matt worked with our secondary and elementary administrators to gather responses from them in terms of how they were working with their student population to meet some of the concerns that were addressed by students at our last board meeting. So, Matt, I'll turn that over to you.
Sure, I'll try to be somewhat brief here and then answer any questions you might have. But you see a variety of attachments there uploaded to the board agenda this evening. You have plans from each of our 26 attendance centers included there. From the secondary standpoint, they worked with student leadership groups to best deliver that message, including how complaints could be filed or addressed if there was a concern being held. And then the non-discrimination statement being read, and then, like I said, following those protocols. The elementary plans there, you see that some of that was still delivered via an assembly or through guidance counselors coming into classrooms and working with students to deliver that message in a way that made sense to the appropriate age groups of students there. So, like I said, a lot of attachments. You see the policy and the statements we sent out to the admin council. I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
So I think when we left the last meeting, we're happy if the students are happy, right? And we meet the demands. Sounds like we've made a good start at that. I personally really like the idea of a work session with the students. And maybe we could assess, how we're doing versus the demands with them, maybe in January. I don't know, we'd have to look for dates, but I thought that was a great idea. It was brought up tonight, but my 2 cents.
I just have a question, because I keep trying to look through all the different policies about this, and maybe someone else can help me because I can't seem to find it. Is there a policy that if a student claims that something happened and it didn't happen, that they'll be suspended and expelled?
Are you saying, so what would happen in a scenario where there's a claim made that an offense happened, and then what happens if there's no confirmation of that, or if there's a denial on the other aspect?
Mm-hmm. Or if administration comes back and feel like that someone is just pretending that happened,
Yeah. I mean, they try to do an investigation, obviously, anytime a report goes through, and then if there seems to be that preponderance evidence or enough to go forward, then discipline could be handed out in that case. If they don't feel like there's enough supporting information in that investigation, then most likely, obviously, conversations still happen, but the discipline probably would not be moved forward in that case. So, kind of in generalities, conduct the investigation, see where that investigation takes you, and then move appropriately from there.
So if nothing's founded or whatever, is the student that reached out to start this form in this document, are they going to have consequences?
The student that brought forward the complaint? No. Now, if we knew it was an intentional issue to try to file a false claim, going after another student, then there could potentially be an investigation surrounding that there was a, malicious intent to disparage somebody else on that sense. But if it was a claim where they felt like something was, done to them and that we just weren't able to found it, we would, of course, not hand out discipline to that student in that case. We just weren't able to confirm their, their suspicion or their feeling that they had been discriminated against.
Okay, I'm just a little concerned that that's what is going to roll out to some of our students, that all these things, and then if you make a false claim, you will be suspended or expelled.
I guess I'm not sure why. I hope they're not walking away with that impression, but, I can't think of a situation where we went back and disciplined a student for bringing forward a claim where they felt like something bad had happened to them or where they've been discriminated against in that case. Like I said, the only instance I could think they would go that route is if for some reason we got to the point where they think somebody was maliciously trying to disparage somebody else through an accusation. But yeah, I mean, I guess the follow-up with those students is appropriate after the investigation. That's a general practice we have to try to make sure
I'm
that.
just concerned that that is what's being communicated to students. So it's saying if you're having these issues, file this report. If it, it's being, I guess the period in that is, but if you make a false claim, you will be suspended or potentially expelled from school.
We're not making that comment to them.
It's going to roll out tomorrow, so I just want you all to know that.
Yeah, the video that we were sent has it in there, which is why I think
Yes,
Latasha
that's why I'm asking about it, because I just saw that video just before I got here and was like,
So I just want to add, I mean, Matt's correct in that how we would find if there be a particular determination, and so we go through or walk through a particular complaint, an individual would bring a complaint, we would walk through that kind of unfounded or founded finding. It is in our policy that we get from that we took from the state, and it's our board policy 104. Individuals who knowingly file false harassment complaints and any person who gives false statements in an investigation shall be subject to discipline by appropriate measures, as shall any person who is found to have retaliated against another violation of this policy. And so there are times where, as Matt was talking about, if there's any type of malicious intent behind possible accusations, we may have to take disciplinary measures. On top of that, there could be times where individuals give false statements, whether that be in a situation where they're trying to protect maybe the accused individual. And so we do have that in the particular policy just to make sure that folks know of the severity of bringing claims forth in this particular way. Should it be used as a deterrent in bringing forth claims? No. I don't believe we should ever do that, and I don't think we will. But it is in there from a policy perspective and also from a training perspective to ensure that people are aware of the severity of the accusations and the allegations that they're bringing forth.
I think I was misunderstanding your question. I think you're talking about if intentionally false claims are brought forward. I guess I was presuming when you were asking the question, you were talking about what if somebody brings something forward and we're not able to found that case.
Mm-hmm.
If it's an unfounded case, it doesn't mean that discipline goes back to that student. Intentionally false claims, I think, is what you're getting at. So sorry if I fumbled through that.
just a little concerned about it coming out in that way, because even I was like, wait, what? There might need to be some clarification about that before it goes out to the student body.
We can certainly do that. Yep.
Now, is the video the and I don't know if the West High has a different video than the City High one. Is that the one everyone's talking to that was emailed to us by John Bacon?
So there are different videos for each of the schools. Yeah, it's not the same video.
It's not the same video. Is the content the same, but it's just done by different
the content was along the lines of what Director.
It's all right.
Matt.
Yeah, the content, there was that stipulated content from the student demands, the non-discrimination statement, the anti-bullying harassment policy, and then how to file the complaint. Those were the things that needed to be consistent, but part of the effort was to work with those student leadership groups on how to best deliver that message. So while it may be delivered differently, that content is consistent throughout.
Okay. Is it possible to get a copy of the West High one as well?
Yeah, certainly.
Super.
Yep. The link is probably in the newsletter uploaded there, but I can send you the link right to your email, so you don't have to go through the attachment.
Just send it direct. I appreciate it.
I'm sorry. Can you talk a little bit in response to the points made by our last community commenter about, and she put it better than I'm going to be able to put it, but just in terms of transparency as far as what happens with complaints that are made. I assume that, of course, there's a confidentiality layer to specific complaints, but is there some kind of reporting of sort of aggregate numbers, or how, a redacted version of how complaints come out, or how much do people know about?
I'll have Kingsley kind of take that one. He deals with a lot of those complaints as they come.
Yeah, I mean, we can share that information. I mean, we do have to report this information to the state, and so at the end of the year, it's somewhat changed. And so about 2 years ago when I started, that information was any type of a complaint was then put in Power School, and then they would have to again go into another website and put that information in. Now we moved to a form where basically I would get all the aggregate data from all the schools, and they would put it into an Excel spreadsheet, and then I would then submit that to the state for that standpoint. And so we do have some aggregate data that we can look at. Now I will say that the nature of that particular data may not necessarily show the level that Ms. Merriweather was talking about. We could look at how we could get that information, especially within the context of the climate that's currently happening, and regardless in the future have that information and want that information available, because I think it's important to have.
I think some of at least what I understood from what she said was, what is the process once that form is sent in? Is it somewhere publicly and clear about this happens, then that happens, and this happens?
Yeah, so the process is a part of the actual form itself. And so when people get the form, they can look up ahead of it and see the process. It is separate from the board policy, but the process is on there. And it speaks, I wasn't going to read it verbatim, but it doesn't necessarily speak to each of the investigative procedures that administration takes in the particular process, but it talks about the timeliness of following up with the complaint, the fact that, once you provide notice of an actual complaint, who the individual you need to talk to as far as that notice is concerned, the appeals process for the possible complaint, and so that's in the general procedures. Let's see if I pull it
So
up.
is there a way to get the investigative process? At least along the way, like the school principal. I mean, I understand that. I've seen the form. So I'm just saying, like, is there a way so that people are clear about?
Yeah, and so we've had conversations about that. I totally feel comfortable giving that information out. It's
I mean, it doesn't have any names on it. I just think people are asking for, like, beyond what we have is just being clear, at least from our level and then the community.
Definitely, and I can kind of walk through the process relatively briefly about how it goes. And so a complaint is filed. And normally that the investigator would be the principal. That is the principal investigator at the building level. Once the complaint is filed, the principal investigator is supposed to move in a reasonable time frame to handle the complaint. From that particular perspective, they're supposed to, talk to both the accused, talk to the victim, talk to witnesses of the particular incident if possible, view video. I mean, in the same way that our principals have handled other complaints. The difference is that as Assistant Superintendent Degner was saying, was that we go through a preponderance of evidence process, and so I think that I normally talk about it from the standpoint of, I think a lot of people know what reasonable doubt means. This is different from the state, different from a school standpoint, because from a school standpoint, we have a lower threshold, and that preponderance of evidence means more likely than not. And so basically we have our principals do a preponderance of evidence table, which from your from the individuals that you interview in a particular complaint, if it's more likely than not that a situation has occurred, then you do have a finding of bullying or a finding of harassment or a finding of discrimination. From there, you would then proceed with the appropriate consequences or additional educational piece as well.
So I think last meeting we talked, this is an opportunity to make sure people really understand the process, right?
No,
because you go through annual updates and you get 5 million of them, and it's hard to internalize it all. But now, I mean, this will be a key question in the end. Do people, specifically students, really understand the process and how you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of.
You don't need to answer tonight. I'm just saying in the end. So if we were to do a work session like in January, I'd expect to answer that question. Everybody say, "Yeah, I understand the process."
Yes. The only reason I was going to answer it in a different way was not a different way, but was to add on was that there's a couple of things I'm actually looking at within the policy in the context of some of the sexual harassment things that have come apart, that has come in the context from a public standpoint, from a sexual harassment, sexual assault, Title IX standpoint. There's some things I want to clean up that may be a little bit longer. I can definitely provide information right now, currently what our policy is, but there are some changes that I think are needed to be made around Title IX, but also in regards to some of the discriminatory climate that we faced as well. And so those changes, I'm not going to be able to make by January, but I can definitely provide the information.
No, and I wasn't talking about that. Right?
Okay.
I'm just talking about the student demands and do people really understand the process?
Yeah. Now, when something goes to the level of bullying, that's your office. correct?
Bullying, harassment, discrimination.
So
Title IX.
when the building administrator feels that it is an actual bullying event, it goes directly to you.
So it doesn't necessarily always go directly to me. They're the principal investigator, and so those things that they have made a finding on would stay at the building level. When there is where the finding is unfounded. So if there's a founded finding. Sorry, my words are getting mixed up here. Founded finding, they would stay at the building level if they're the principal investigator, unless it's appealed. If it's an unfounded finding, that does kick to me because I saw normally that those situations would more likely be appealed, and so I wanted some time to review the information to ensure that we are expediting the process for parents, students, teachers, and that it wasn't I was receiving the information again and having the individuals that are bringing the complaint have to repeat all that information again. It just slowed down the process.
But a building level bullying founded situation, they're still going to notify you.
They wouldn't necessarily have to notify me until the end of the year when they provide that information. So if it's a founded case of bullying or harassment, they wouldn't necessarily have to notify me until the end of the year.
Is there any requirement for them to notify us?
There is no current requirement for them to notify.
Or board, to let the board know that we have an incidence of this.
There's no current requirement for them to notify the board.
But I'm assuming that the building principal has to notify the superintendent.
Not necessarily.
So we can have bullying going on and only the building principal knows about it?
Again, that information is looked at on a regular basis from a data standpoint. I mean, again, there's two ways that I look at that information. It could be at the end of the year. It could be from just looking. Part of my job is to look at data from an equity standpoint on a regular basis, and so I pull Power School data on a regular basis to look at where we're at from a building level. That's also to be proactive in the event that, something is going on on one particular building, and it may be that the principal is trying to work the situation out themselves, and so me to avail myself of resources and try to help them through the situations. And so that's basically from that standpoint what we do.
Kingsley, I assume that, I guess in my mind, when I imagine disciplinary things, I usually think they're initiated by school personnel as opposed to by a student or the victim of something. I assume that's true with bullying too, right? I mean, if something happens, a hall monitor sees it or a teacher sees it, you're not going to wait for the student who was harassed or bullied to file a complaint, right?
Right, and so when the OCR talks about providing whenever there's notice, and so notice could be of you witnessing a particular event, notice can be of an individual coming up to you. I will say that we do require documentation, and there's two ways that we do that. One, we do it from a way of an actual individual coming to file the complaint. In your example, you talked about an individual that may see, a hall monitor may see the situation. In that case, we would just require that hall monitor get help from the individual or just provide that written documentation. The reason why is that we just need that written documentation to ensure there's a process moving forward as far as if there's appeal or anything else that we have questions about, so we know what's going on.
All right. Any follow-ups?
I would just lastly say, the current policy or the way that we receive complaints is the training that I received from the state. If there's reason to make changes or around principals providing more notice along those lines, I'm welcome to those questions or welcome to move forward. But that was a training that a couple of us received, not only myself, but a couple of other principals as far as the process in which we want to handle complaints. Also noting that my office is one person, and so having to review as many. Basically putting the power in the principal's hands as far as being the principal investigator, and again me providing that level of support or from the appeals process as well.
Well, it could be a future work session item, right? It touches a little bit on tonight, but it could be a future. That's what I'm thinking, follow-up. So that could be a future work session, investigation, follow-up. Would we be willing to entertain a work session, or maybe the listening post would be better with student listening posts?
Now, if you have a listening post, is it that's not limited by the number of board members that can be there. You could have all 7, correct?
No, you can't. So we
Okay,
want to do a
well,
work session.
I think it might be better than just have a work session and have everybody there. And
Or it could be a work session that kind of functions like a listening post, you know?
Yeah.
As long as it's announced as a meeting, we can run it like.
Pro of a work session or listening posts, if we could do 2 or 3 of them, work session, we might just want to have one.
Well, in a work
but-
session where they'd be allowed to come to the table and
Yeah.
provide input, yes, I think that would be a good idea.
So why don't we plan, we'll look for some dates.
Could do it off-site, too. You might
we
want to
did it at
consider
one of the high
doing it at
schools.
3 high schools, for
Yep,
instance.
that'd be a great
We
idea.
Flip a coin on what high school to go to and do it there. Why don't we look for dates in ideally January, or later in February. All right, anything else on this topic tonight?
I just have one quick question for Kingsley. So one of the community commenters had asked if disability bullying is considered different from just mainstream bullying. None of it's mainstream, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Is that handled differently?
No, and so basically one of the things that we're going to have to look at, and that was kind of what I was trying to answer with President Lynch's comment, is there's been a couple of, not only this community comment, but also from some community members that I've talked with about whether or not needs to be a heightened discipline pertaining to any type of discriminatory situation or any type of discriminatory situation based on race or maybe disability, whatever the case may be. Currently, our policies don't speak to that. I'm working on thinking how we could particularly do that. I want to make sure that we do it from a process standpoint. I mean, I could throw something in there, but I want to be able to talk with a couple of other colleagues that have done the work in this particular area to change that particular policy. And so, currently, to answer just clearly, currently no, but just based on some of the community concerns. I think Ms. Babcock is gone, but some of the concerns she's expressed to me as well. We're looking how we could do that.
All right, thanks, Kingsley and Matt.
One other thing, just to put a bug in your ear, suggest would be, I know we want to hear from the students and definitely what their perspective and voice is on the issue. But if there's a lot of questions about investigations or how those are handled, might also be nice to have a sampling of principals and how that's facilitated in the building.
Well,
they
I'm
can
taking
speak
two-
right to that.
I'm taking-
I'm
I'm taking 2 follow-ups, yeah.
Sure.
I think the work session with the students would be let's review the list of demands. How's it going? You know what I mean? I think this would be a separate work session where we really get into that.
Sure, great.
But I'm sure the principals may want to attend the work session too, but that'd be outstanding.
Great.
And we'll work that. We'll work the details of it. All right, there's a lot of topics I know we want to get to tonight, and I don't want to push any. I'd prefer not to push any of them off tonight, right? So I'm just going to keep pushing to try to keep us moving. So next item is voluntary transfer. Steve?
Sure. A couple of data points that were asked for at the last discussion about this last week. There's an attachment. It's listed as capstone information. I tried to put it in a chart that hopefully is relatively easy to understand. We'll look at the junior high first on there. You want to pull that up for me, Kristen? Thanks. We've got about 50% of the students responded, and those were students who responded that they would choose to capstone at their current 8th grade school. When you look at the chart, you see which school they're assigned to as their home school. You see the total number of students in 8th grade at that school and the total number at current 7th graders and the total number of capstone requests that we received. So if you look down in the bottom right-hand corner, we received 83 out of 167. Earlier this week, we sent a Blackboard Connect email to everyone who did not respond to confirm that their intent was actually to forego the capstone and move to the new school. So we will hopefully have all those responses in by Friday of this week. Anyone who does not respond by Friday of this week, the school counselors will actually contact them directly next week while they're at school to see if they can get follow-up from those students. In particular, if you look at the top in the terms of the assigned homeschool, you see 66 students at Northwest, and they elected to capstone at Northwest. Of those 66 students, 49 of them are from the Wickham attendance area, which was one of the questions on Tuesday night last week. If you look at the students assigned homeschool is North Central. There are 54 there. You see 18 returned. Those 18 are from Kirkwood Elementary School. And then down in the bottom in the center there where it says 41, assigned to Northwest Junior High as their home school. 11 elected to Capstone at Southeast. Those 11 are from the Alexander and Twain Elementary School. So those are the home schools of the students who elected to Capstone. So we will again be contacting anyone who does not respond by Friday to get either a written confirmation or verbal confirmation from them. We'd like to get that information as soon as possible, preferably by next Monday or Tuesday. One of the reasons for that is we put them in the computer with their home school, and that's how they go through the registration process, so we want to make sure that they are assigned appropriately to go through registration. If you want to scroll down to high school, again, down in the lower right-hand corner, you see we've got 552 total students in 11th and 12th grade eligible for capstoning. We received responses from 270 of those students, or again, about 50% of them. Again, we've got a Blackboard Connect email out to those who did not respond with a request to respond by Friday. Anyone who doesn't respond by Friday, our school counselors will contact them personally next week to get a response from them. So that we can again assign them in the student information system in PowerSchool so that they appropriately go through the registration process. When we are done with that, we will have very firm numbers in terms of enrollment compared to capacity. That was one of the questions that came up on Tuesday. Kristen, if you want to flip to the next sheet, which is our voluntary transfer. At this point in time, if you look at the top sheet here, we've got 76 students at the junior high level who've requested a voluntary transfer. Of that number, as you look through there, questions came up about the voluntary transfer at the discussion last Tuesday. If you look under students whose home school is North Central as 7th and 8th graders, and now are scheduled to or who would elect to go to Northwest instead. 26 out of the 32 7th graders are Kirkwood students, and 1 out of the 3 8th graders is a current Kirkwood student. Next group down from Northwest to Southeast, 11 are listed there as 7th graders. 8 of those are Alexander students, and then 2 listed as 8th graders, and 1 of those is an Alexander student. So those are a couple of demographic questions that came up on Tuesday. So we have, again, 76 students at the junior high. Once we know those capstone numbers, we'll be able to look at capacity and determine availability for those students. If you want to scroll down to the next page. We have 140 students that have requested that movement at the high school level. As we discussed last Tuesday, a couple of the issues there, if you look at the students in the from Lincoln High School category, to either City High or West High. You see 9 ninth graders, 10 10th graders incoming at City High, 14 ninth graders, and 23 incoming 10th graders at West High School. Those are the students that we'd consider for hardship transfers. Questions that came up on Tuesday were origination of those requests. Of those 19 students who have requested to go from Liberty High School to City High, all 19 of those are former Lincoln Elementary School students. So part of the conversation at the meeting was what might constitute a hardship, and conversations at earlier work sessions raised the issue of students who'd been asked to move by the district multiple times, and that included students at Lincoln Elementary School in that north attendance area, and then the south attendance area who've been asked to move to City High. Over on the far side there, you've got students who have asked to go from Liberty High School to West. We've got 14 ninth graders, 23 10th graders. There were no students from either Lincoln or Hills in either of those categories of students who asked to move. So none of those groups of students that we discussed at that meeting who've been asked to move multiple times. So then within that group, we went through and did an initial review. One of the things that we were looking for was students who had issues related to either special education programs, English language learner programs, or who may be working with a 504 accommodation in school. So those are currently being reviewed by ELL, Special Ed, and Health Services to determine whether or not the rationale there is an appropriate one in and of itself, absent looking at any other hardships, to grant that waiver and allow them to remain at either City High or West High. So right now, that's a very small number. We're looking at a handful of kids right now in those 3 departments that they're reviewing. The remainder of the students on the initial review don't appear to have a hardship. So a majority of those students in this cluster over here with the 14 and 23 from Liberty High to West do not appear to qualify for a hardship exclusion. So if you look down that right-hand corner and see 140, it looks to be more along the lines of 110 kids that we would be looking at as potential candidates for voluntary transfer among the 3 high schools, among the approximately 3,800 kids we've got enrolled at the high school level.
I was going to say, for context, it'd be like that divided by like 4,000, right?
Yeah, about 3,800. Yeah.
So it's a pretty small number of requests.
It's a relatively small number of requests in relation to the total number of students enrolled at the 2 high schools.
Junior high, right? I mean, it was
yes.
Similar. If there's any surprise, I'm surprised how small the numbers.
Yep. I guess far less than we thought there might be. In particular, far fewer than we thought there might be in terms of the request for some type of hardship exclusion from Liberty High to either City or West.
That doesn't surprise me. I just might have guessed higher, but, you know. Great. Anything you need from us?
We're going to finish, again, going back to the capstone piece, we're going to finish that engagement with parents and students to make sure that we know where it is that they want to go. That'll give us a real firm handle on capacity. We're going to finish that review of the special circumstances of the students who have requested to go back to either City or West from Liberty High and determine whether or not there's anyone that has a legitimate hardship waiver in there. And then after we're done with that, we'll look at capacity. Ideally, we'd like to provide some type of feedback to parents by next Wednesday, so we're hoping we'll have enough data to do that at that time.
Can you speak to the 23 ninth graders and 15 10th graders that wish to go to Liberty that were assigned to West?
Sure, yep. Of the 23 students who've asked to go from West to Liberty, 8 of the 23 are Alexander kids. 8 of the 15...
Liberty?
I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong cell here. No, I'm sorry. No, I don't have the breakdown of the West to Liberty numbers on there. Wait, no, I'm sorry. I do. I've got the numbers. I don't have the source school on there. I believe 8 of the 23 are those Wickham students, Matt? I don't have a label on there. I've got 8.
Yeah, I believe those are Wickham students.
I think we got 8 out of
those.
23 are Wickham, and the 8 out of 15 are Wickham. I don't have a data label on there. Let me just check here. Yeah, it looks like, so we've got 8 out of each of those group are students who were Wickham attendance area students.
So I'm just curious, what are some of the other reasons that kids that don't live very far north would be asking to go to Liberty? What are the reasons that they've given?
I'd say most of the reasons that were given were preference to stay where they are. I'm sorry, the ones that are wishing to go north.
Yeah.
The requests to go north, most of those did not carry a rationale with them because it's not a hardship to ask to go into Liberty, so those folks just filled out the forms. The ones that we got the rationale from were people that did that because of the hardship request.
All right, anything else you need from us? Sounds like it's moving along, and we'll have it finalized by next Wednesday.
We hope so, yes. Again, we should have, hopefully, most of our data solidified by Friday. And we'll send out updated copies of this chart both to the board and to the secondary administrative team.
Can you guys provide a little bit of explanation or some kind of key when you send it? Just for clarification.
Yep, we can definitely do that.
Really easy to get lost, the legend or whatever.
So I'm not ready to just close this item yet. I'd like to have a little more discussion. One of the things I'd like is if we could put in writing what the rules are for exceptions so that everybody knows. Everybody has the same opportunity to apply for an exception. One thing I heard since our last work session is that some parents that are assigned to Liberty didn't know that they even could apply for an exception. Some parents went ahead and did it. Like for example, on the sibling rule, people didn't know that that was an option.
Everybody's been clear they've received the process.
Yeah, but we had said that all 9th and 10th graders assigned to Liberty must go to Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they were told.
Do we have clarification on that? If you've got a 11th grader who's decided to stay at West under the capstone rule, and then you got a 9th grader, well, you'd rather not have them at two separate high schools. Is that a hardship?
Right now, we're not considering that a hardship.
Because it's a personal choice.
So that's what I'm asking, is if you could just put in writing
Yep.
what is the hardship.
We can definitely do that, and we'll include that as a key at the bottom so that you can see it on this sheet in particular, and we can put some operational definitions on that.
That would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'd like to say, and this has to do with the enrollment reports, but I am concerned about starting in 2018, the fall of 2018, why we would encourage or support kids of means. I mean, we're not going to make a distinction of whether they're of means or not, but if somebody can get to Liberty High that's not assigned to Liberty High, there's no public transportation, it's not on the way to anything, so likely, not necessarily all of them, but many of them will be of means. If we value having balance, I guess I'm not sure I understand why we would go that route.
The board's
And- what's that?
The board's perspective over time has been a balance between two things. The first is we want people to attend their home school. So if we had our preference, we want our students to attend their home school. Having said that, we also want to provide the flexibility for kids within the district, kids and family, the same flexibility that somebody open enrolling would have. And this is the hard balance.
Open enrollers don't get to choose the school they go to, though.
They do if there's capacity and there's no constraint.
Make sure you differentiate between open enrollment, they come from outside the district in, voluntary transfer, and they're moving around inside the district. So if you're an open enrollment student, you live in Solon, Clear Creek, Lone Tree, and you'd like to come in, when you fill out that form, you can indicate a preference, whether it's an elementary, a junior high, or a high school. The district, though, under state statute, that's a reserved right for us that we can choose to place you, and so that's our opportunity as you come into the district to look at your request, look at the needs and opportunities in our school and where the pinch points are, and then make those assignments for open enrollment students who come from the outside in. Voluntary transfer on the inside of the district is what we're working with here, and that's students that are assigned to one attendance area and are asking to go to a different attendance area.
It's just balancing those two objectives, I guess.
Well, you know, the enrollment reports that we have and the projections that we already sort of had show that Liberty is supposed to be over capacity as of 2019. I don't understand why we would allow 9th graders and 10th graders to transfer in there next year. They're just going to add to the degree to which that building is over capacity as of 2019. Now, I know it's not a whole lot of people, but it just adds to a situation that is already in a position that we don't want. And I keep seeing it against the background of we told students at Kirkwood and Alexander that they got to go to more distant schools, whether they want to or not. They may have a transfer option, but they probably don't have an easy way of providing their own transportation. We're willing to say no to them in order to, work out our capacity and FRL goals. But it seems like we're less willing to say no to people who can get themselves. And I don't, for years we've had closed secondary transfers. We survived. People went to the school they were assigned to. They're all fine schools. Now it seems like all of a sudden, not only are we going to open transfers, we're going to let people transfer into school even if it overcrowds the school. So I'm just worried, A, that I wouldn't want to overcrowd the school, and B, that there's a little bit of a double standard there. So if it were me, I would say no 9th graders and 10th graders, unless there's a real hardship, could transfer into Liberty next year.
And my personal opinion on that would be that there's some 9th graders this year who have been told that they could transfer to Liberty. So I would feel more comfortable saying next year, starting next year, we're going to say, now we're not going to allow transfers anymore. Unless we want to go back on some of those kids are on the Liberty football team and they're not living in the Liberty area. So I just feel like it's fair to give families a year's notice.
Well, that's the first thing I was going to say. I wouldn't want to do it retrospectively, or we're already into the
Well,
process.
who was told that they could go? Why was anyone told that they would be able to transfer into
It was implied
Liberty?
you could apply for a voluntary transfer.
You can apply, but we never told people it'd be granted.
So I have no interest in closing Liberty right now. I'll just put it that way. I'm not against it. I understand the point. If a school's going to close up or fill up, you'd close enrollment. That's exactly what we did, with starting at West and then at City. But I think you got to go through and make sure that we've kind of followed a deliberate process to do that. So if we want to look at it next year.
Well, I'd like to see it closed for ninth graders.
Again, I have no interest. So if there's other people that are really interested in that, I'll just say I have no interest. I'd rather move on to other topics tonight. I think we're having the same conversation we've had many times already.
If we go by what Steve said at the work session, there is a capacity for them. Because he said it would be capacity while they're in the seat in the building, not future capacity, 500 seats added on in 2022. So there isn't capacity for them. By the time they're seniors, it'll be over 1,000.
I'll just go ahead and make the motion. Can we close Liberty to ninth grade transfers next year?
I can second that.
You're talking voluntary transfer, right, Chris, just to clarify?
Voluntary transfers, with the exception of a hardship that qualifies.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Just to clarify, Steve, so when we talked this at the work session, when you look at a student coming in, you look to see if there's capacity and seats all the way throughout their time there, correct?
Correct.
So if we start this year and the ninth graders go, there's seats for them.
Correct.
The ones that have asked to transfer. So now to next year, when we look at these again, incoming ninth graders, if there's not seats for them, then we would look at closing Liberty then.
Right. For incoming
Ninth graders, there will be seats for them in ninth grade, but by the time they get to 11th grade, the building will be overcrowded, and we're going to presumably let them stay, right? Is that the new approach? You're
Right.
transferring as a ninth grader, you can stay until graduation. There won't be seats for them.
Right, and that's what we have to look at.
Would you let ninth graders in if you knew that there would not be seats for them 3 years later, or 2 years later?
Well, that was part of the conversation that we had at the board table last week. If there are 2 more kids than the capacity in that final year before the addition goes in, would you then go back and lottery off the seats that were available based on that, or would you allow all of the students to go in? And that wasn't, I don't think we reached a conclusion at that time with that discussion.
Comes to ninth graders, though, if we look at 2019, I mean, the building's already over capacity, period, right? It's not going to be like just the last 2 transfers who there's no room for. I mean, even the first one, there's no room for.
I'll just say in the past, we haven't closed high school right at 100 either, but, I understand the concept. We certainly do want to manage our capacity, but we didn't close West when we got to 100. Or we didn't, you know what I mean? So that's just a whole nother conversation. I think you know where I'm at. I'm going to vote no. I think we should move on to more important topics tonight. That's my 2 cents. Further discussion?
I'm just going to reiterate what I said last week in the work session, which is that City High and West High, as well as our junior highs, are currently well over capacity. And while we don't like that, I think that a short term, while we wait to put an addition onto Liberty, is insignificant compared to what our students have been dealing with for a very long time, and we continue to put forth excellent numbers on student achievement and wonderful high-achieving kids.
Steve, is this like 1% of the ninth grade class, these 23 students that are leaving West High to...
I'd have to look. I don't know that.
Is it like 400 kids in that class or something?
Yeah, that's about right. If you think of...
So it's...
I'm sorry, which class are you looking at?
I'm talking about at Liberty, what is going to be the ninth grade number?
Do you have that number handy off the top of your head, man?
It's right around 200 to 250 students in there. So for
it
a
will
freshman
go up.
class, that's what the projections is, about probably closer to 200 than the 250.
Okay. So technically there is space for these kids, technically.
Well, not in year 11, not
Right.
11th
Chris,
grade.
if it's under 250 this year, then as it moves, the grade level moves through, there's room at that grade level is the way I'd think about it too, right? So
Well, I mean, the
You're trying to
projected enrollment at Liberty in 2019 without any transfers is something, and I wish I had the number right in front of me, it is over 1,000.
yeah, but if you, so again, I'll just use the math. So if you kept every grade level to 250, you're going to be within capacity as you.
That's not what the projection shows.
I know, you're talking the projection, we're talking about whether you open or close. If you kept every grade level at 250, you'd be fine.
I guess I'm not disagreeing with that, but what's that got to do with whether we should let these
Well,
ninth graders
it's a future conversation on do you close it when the ninth grade looks like it's over 250, right?
Yeah, but you can't close it to people who are in the Liberty zone.
Again,
those people alone are going to put you over 1,000.
Just hear me. So if you always kept the ninth grade class to 250, then as it matriculates through, you're going to be fine for capacity, right?
Okay, but that's not what's going to happen.
Sure it is. I mean, again, as you think about the goal, the capacity and the goalposts and people applying, that could be the tweak going forward to make sure that the grade level stays within capacity.
But if the projection for 2019 is over 1,000, we've got over 250 per class.
Yeah. So you'd probably potentially stop taking voluntary transfers then.
Well, all I'm saying is I wouldn't let a transfer in if we know that it's going to worsen overcrowding that, assuming our projections are reasonably accurate, it's going to worsen overcrowding that we know is going to happen.
If you keep the grade level below 250, you're fine. So I think that's the thing to watch over time.
Boy, I don't know. I don't see how you can say these guys, every single one of those transfers from ninth grade is one more person over capacity in 2019, according to our projections.
So talking the catchment areas, not projections, the catchment areas that were given to us in June, in 2019, there would be over 1,000 kids there. 1,092.
Well, that's what projections show.
So about 10% over capacity.
Yeah, but we're talking voluntary transfer.
This is catchment area.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's without any voluntary transfers.
Without any voluntary transfers.
All right, further discussion? Kim, we're ready to vote.
Can you remind us of what the...
I have the motion is to close Liberty High School to voluntary transfers next year with the exception of hardships.
I don't think that's
what he
that's
said.
not what he said.
Wasn't that what I said?
That is what he said.
The ninth grade.
To
only.
ninth, you said ninth grade, right?
No, I did not say ninth
Oh, I'm
grade.
sorry.
Liberty
To
High
ninth
School,
grade
to ninth grade.
transfers.
All right. Online voting is open.
It's not coming through, but
Nothing?
there it is.
There we go.
Okay.
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with directors Liebig, Hemingway, Rotland, and Ressler voting yea, and directors Deloach, Kirschling, and Lynch voting nay.
All right, Steve, do you need anything else on that?
No, I don't.
Anything else on voluntary transfer? Good to go? All right, next agenda item is we need to help assign. So, Steve, do you want to take us through the
Sure.
level up?
So the AEA has a vacancy on their board. They have a prescribed process for filling that. There is a small portion of the Iowa City Community School District that's part of that district, which also includes Washington, Mid-Prairie, Williamsburg, Highland, English Valleys, Lone Tree, and again, that small portion of Iowa City. And there is a convention to fill that position that takes place at 6:30 on the evening of January 5th. One of the things that our board needs to do is to nominate a delegate and an alternate who can attend that convention and vote for that director. So you'll see that there's a certification or resolution that's attached. Essentially, we need to fill in those blanks. Obviously, we are at the Iowa City Community School District. We're meeting on December 13th, and then we're appointing blank as the delegate, blank as the alternate, and we'll certify it as of today.
So is there anybody who can make it that night? That's the first question.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest one is you need to be in Washington. It is not at the AEA. It is down in Washington.
Thursday.
Volunteers? We can't nominate you, Steve?
What's that? Can you nominate me? No, I'm sorry, you can't nominate me.
Oh, man.
Did ask if you could proxy and was told that it has to be in person. I apologize. I did what I could to try to alleviate someone from needing to be there. I apologize for that, but that was the best I could do.
There's a real nice Italian restaurant in Washington I've always wanted to go to.
Going once.
And I will share this with you too. I did, when I talked to the AEA chief executive, I did tell him that I thought there might be somewhat of a hardship from that. Obviously, it's down in Washington. He had already contacted each of those boards. They do plan to have a delegate there, so there is no fear that there won't be a majority. There won't be a quorum if you are unable to send anybody. So just an FYI.
Out of town.
Bowl games on tonight?
I don't know. Check the schedule.
I'll put myself in if, you know.
How about this, Phil? I'll be your backup.
What?
I'll be your backup.
Okay, very good.
In case there is a big game that night. Or...
If it's snowing, I can't go.
All right, so we'd entertain a motion that Phil be our delegate and I'll be the alternate as per the resolution that's in the package.
And I'm free to vote as my conscience dictates, or am I supposed
Yes.
to carry? Okay.
Yes.
My guess is you'll have a choice of maybe one, but anyway, we'll see. You never
That may
know.
be.
So I entertain a motion to appoint Phil as the primary and myself as the alternate as per the resolution in the packet. Is somebody willing to make the motion?
I move that we appoint Phil as the primary and you as the alternate for the Director District 6 convention.
Is there a second?
Second.
Paul has the second. Nick, further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim. Next item is Director Liaisons. I think we just reviewed this last meeting, so with Thanksgiving in between, there's not much there, and we'll keep moving. Next item is legislative update. Steve? This is going to be a real quick item,
Yep,
right?
just real
Yeah.
quickly, a couple things we attached there. The first is the legislative priorities brochure. The second one is legislative meetings. We have been, at least for the last 7 years, the host for the Johnson County Legislative Forum. There's also a Lynn County Legislative Forum. These are keyed primarily to issues of education. We invite all educators who are in the districts that are in Johnson County, either all or in part, plus all of the legislators who serve those districts, either all or in part, to come here on a Friday afternoon. It's an opportunity primarily for us to hear from the legislators about what's going on in Des Moines, and also an opportunity for them to ask questions that they have of us so that they are well prepared when they go back to Des Moines to work on legislative issues. We start those forums in December just so that we can get feedback from them. They can get feedback from us before the legislative session begins in January, and the first one of those is this Friday. We traditionally get about 75% of our area legislators, and there's usually 4 or 5 to 6 school districts represented by either board members, administrators, or association members.
Sounds good. I think our priorities are clear. If we could probably just emphasize the importance of SAVE, particularly what's going on, that'd be great. All right, further discussion on this one? All right, moving into teaching and learning. The next item on the agenda is transportation. I think, Steve, you're going to have...
Yep, I'm going to turn that over to Craig and Joan. Joan's been working very diligently with 2 committees, one at the elementary level, one at the secondary level, looking at discretionary busing and activity busing. She's got some folks here with her, and they're going to walk through some of the feedback that they've gathered as part of that process.
Thank you for the opportunity this evening. You had a very full agenda, so we'll try not to take too much of your time. So I'm Joan Vandenberg, and I'm the chair of the Transportation Committee. And my show and tell project tonight, this evening, are the student and family advocates from the 3 schools that benefited from the attendance support busing. So I have Megan Lobb from Kirkwood Elementary, Megan Recker from Horn Elementary, and Shannon Miner from Alexander. So you received a summary report in your board packet, so I'm not going to take very much time to go through that unless there are questions. I think the main thing that we wanted to start off with is just talk about the outcomes that we've seen with our support busing for these 3 schools. So first up is Megan.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for giving Kirkwood discretionary busing this year. We had a block party before school started, and parents and even people from the neighborhood were very appreciative to see a bus for the Kirkwood area attendance area. We have 46 students right now riding the bus. There's some more that are signed up for the bus, but for different before and after school kind of option reasons and changes have not been riding. But 46 students are riding. Of those, there are 12 students that lived in that same area last year, so I was able to look at their attendance from last school year and this year comparing the same location. Of those 12, 8 have shown improvement in attendance, and I was looking at unexcused tardies and unexcused absences. One thing to consider is the bell schedule change, so that's something that it's a little hard to compare last year to this year because it's almost an hour different start time. But there has been 8 that showed improvement. Of those 8, there's half that showed a significant improvement, where their tardies last year ranged from 18 to 22 unexcused tardies, and so far this year are ranging from 0 to 6. And I'd like to highlight one student from in there, just because I know it's a lot of numbers, but I know these kids, and he has pretty severe asthma, where we've called 911 at school, for his asthma. And he had 15 unexcused absences last year, and 22 unexcused tardies last year. This year he's had 0 unexcused absences and 6 unexcused tardies. So there's still tardies, but his mom having to keep him home for the whole day because it's too cold for him to walk, and she's a single mom without a car, has improved. She also gave me a statement that I just wanted to quickly read. I know there's not a lot of time, but she said, "I really appreciate the bus this year. It has really helped with my son's tardies. He had a lot last year, and his asthma is bad, so I used to have trouble getting him to school, especially on cold days. It's so nice now to be able to put him on the bus and then head to work myself. I really hope there can be still a bus next year. I really need there to be." So just to have a parent voice. Then we have 2 that are kind of unchanged attendance, they didn't really necessarily have attendance issues before. And then we've had 2 that have shown a decline in attendance this year. Again, there's other barriers than just transportation, and the bell schedule could have affected that. Then I also wanted to look at, there are students that didn't start the bus right away on the first day. All those students started on the first day. But there are some students that didn't. Oh, sorry. Do we need to switch? Yeah, this is the next one. They started later into the year, so I could look at, even though they didn't live in the same place last year, I could look at before and after they started the bus. And for those students that started end of October or after, kind of more into the school year, there was 13 of those students, and 9 of them have shown improvement in attendance, tardies, and unexcused absences. And 1 is unchanged, and 3 have shown declined attendance. To highlight from the improved, we have 4 students that had 5 to 9 unexcused tardy. They ranged from 5 to 9 unexcused tardies before they started on the bus, and have had 0 tardies since riding the bus. And they are students that have had truancy issues in the past as well, in past years. So I think that was really nice to see. The 3 that showed decline attendance, just to kind of also speak to that, there are 3 homeless students that are staying in this area, and we put on the bus, but there was a handful of nights where they had to go to a hotel and were not in this area. So it's just things like that, like you can't see kind of that, so then they didn't ride the bus. So there are little we're dealing with kind of complex issues and multiple barriers. But I think overall, we've seen improvement, and we really appreciate it.
So, the vast majority of your sample set saw improvement, and then they saw pretty significant improvement, right? So that's...
Yeah, so
and
I
you could-
anticipate with the cold weather that to only
Even more,
increase,
yeah.
or stay the same, because I think there's even more motivation to catch the bus with these chilly temperatures.
And you said it, but I just want to say, this is only the kids you had like before and after picture of, right? So there's probably a lot of mobility and whatever. So I'm sure this would translate to the rest of the...
Yeah, there is a group of kids that started riding from first day of school, but didn't live there last year, like new to our school and new to that area. So I have nothing really to compare. So those aren't pictured here. But,
Great.
yeah.
What level do you consider significant tardiness if you have kids that are missing 25 days of school?
Yeah, so I kind of went off of truancy stuff. We looked at unexcused tardies and unexcused absences, which what we flagged for truancy. But I considered those like significantly improved, the ones that were like 18 to 22, yeah.
Well, but when do you consider someone's absences to be excessive?
So truancy is more than, they generally get the first letter at more than 5 unexcused absences, I believe, and then more than 3 unexcused tardies, but then they have to have the meeting when it gets to 8 unexcused absences and 5 unexcused tardies is when they're considered truant.
Someone who's in the range of 25, that's a real significant issue.
Yes.
And
yeah, and some of these, we're close to, not quite to 25 last year, but in the 20s.
Yeah.
So.
Excellent.
I'll be your switcher.
And I'm Megan also, and I work at Horn Elementary. And so we looked at areas during the 2015-16 school year, and we identified areas where transportation was a barrier for students getting to school by looking at tardies and absences. So in the fall of this school year, we added students to an existing Horn bus that had some empty seats on it. So we already had just some discretionary busing and added some pay to ride. So we kind of phased it in. We started busing students that lived on West Side Drive, Earl Road, and Jeffrey Street on October 3rd. And then we started busing students that lived on Plainview Drive, Little Creek Lane, Gren Drive, Gren Court on November 17th. And so this year, prior to busing starting, 15 of the 29 students that are now bused had 1 or more tardies. And since busing has started, only 3 of the 29 students have had tardies, and all 3 of those students with tardies are in the same family and have had some family issues going on. And then of the 29 students riding the bus, 15 of the students lived at the same address last year and attended Horn, and 11 of the 15 students showed an improvement in attendance when we compared their attendance from this year to last year. 3 of the students' attendance was the same as last year, and 1 of the students' attendance was worse than last year.
Great.
And I did have a mom, too, who had emailed me and just, we have several parents when they come to enroll their kids at Horn ask for busing, and we have to explain the busing policy and stuff. So we have parents that are thrilled when we are able to provide a bus. And I did have one mom email me who was just said, I'm so glad that my kids have the bus to pick them up. And she had surgery on November 19th and said without the bus, she couldn't pick up and drop off the kids. And they used to go to Weber and got a bus there, but then they moved into the Horn area and didn't get a bus. And so she had to change her schedule and things like that. Anyway, I was just very grateful. So we've had lots of parents that are very grateful. So thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Shannon Miner. I'm the student and family advocate at Alexander, which really kind of pitched this whole thing. And so I really wanted to just say, it says up here that comparison data is available. We missed an un. It's actually unavailable because this attendance support busing, I believe, is truly an example of strong parent effort coupled with policy for the betterment of all of our students. And so will forever be very proud of the families that came together and advocated to make this happen at Alexander. And I think it really is a shining example of the hard work and the collaboration that you all have done with community members. What I can tell you that is data-based is that as of right now, I spoke with our school administrative manager, who would be our attendance officer, as well as our principal in the last few weeks, and just looking at our attendance data. We have very strong attendance right now. Those times that we are not, we're following the attendance protocol. There are generally other barriers that are happening for those children and for those families. We cannot ever identify that transportation is a barrier. So we have alleviated that as a barrier at Alexander School. When we go in and I get invited to those meetings and we sit down and we start brainstorming, access to transportation, use of transportation might be another question, but access to transportation is never a reason that we're going to need to brainstorm. We're incredibly grateful. We are busing over 200 children to Alexander. Many of the things that we have had to work out in that process, because it is difficult to it has not been the most seamless process with paperwork and other things, but we've worked really, really hard, and Joan will highlight that, and it's highlighted as well, for those Alexander students to be able to access that busing in a way that will alleviate a lot of what I kind of call the clunkiness of getting all of it set up, just with paperwork and time there, when you have that many children who are highly mobile as well. So we're very, very grateful. I did speak to a couple of parents, and some themes came up. The themes were, for example, a father who has 7 children in the school district, but 13 children total, who said, you know, I'm so new to this country. I don't speak the language. My wife has never known how to drive. I know how to drive. When I walked in the door at Alexander, I was really scared when my support worker brought me out here, the family's refugees. I was nervous because it's long and there's a really long cornfield and it was snowing that day. And he said, and then they told me, well, you'll have buses. And he goes, but I wasn't sure I was going to, because I heard there was this law about 2 miles. And he said, I don't know what we would do. I'm trying to get my other children off. I'm the only driver. We're trying to get to our jobs to stabilize our life here. So he said, please tell that school board, thank you so much for giving us this attendance support busing. And what he shares is what I hear from parents every day. I don't think they could imagine how they'd get their children to school every day. And his story really does cover the barriers that I've experienced with my family. So thank you so much for that collaborative effort. I will be forever grateful to you, but ultimately so proud of my Alexander families for advocating for themselves. Thanks, guys. If you have questions for Alexander, I'm glad to answer some. I think about this a lot. Mm-hmm. So,
no, I think that was the definitely one of the best school board meetings ever from a advocation standpoint, and coming together, common solution, standing ovation, and the whole thing. So it was awesome.
Chris, I had surgery 10 days prior and had no business being here, but I sat in the back and cried as I watched every single one of my parents come up here.
And this is just showing that I guess in retrospect, we were brilliant to, do the lead model at Alexander, and thank you for being the lead model. And then to scale it up across the district was outstanding, and it's great to see the actual data. We kind of knew this would be true, but then you got to see it and feel it and to believe it, right? So.
Well, I just returned from the National Conference for the Education of Homeless Children, and I went to a session on attendance, particularly with highly mobile children. And somebody from a think tank in New York heard how we used our attendance data to come up with this and pulled me aside and said, tell me about what you guys did to determine this. And I said, it was really simple data, but we really used it, and now we're going to check it. And felt like it was such a smart use of data and for our outcomes. And so then I felt really proud to be representing Iowa City Schools that day and kind of patted all of us on the back. So we're doing some good things, guys.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, a shout out to these guys. One thing, this is more work for them. I mean, it's a good thing, and it's a wonderful opportunity, but there is a lot of communication and management. So they're rock stars, and they hung in here tonight with us. So I will just zip through quickly. Our elementary committee has just met once, and our recommendation is, we've had discretionary busing, we've had pay-to-ride busing, and then we have mandatory busing, and so we just want to have attendance support busing. And so those are those areas that we would give busing to that ordinarily wouldn't get it because we feel like there are attendance barriers or attendance support is needed. We have an issue. We want to keep talking about some of those smaller areas in the district that have similar barriers to these more concentrated areas. But we are, fiscally conservative enough that we know that you don't need a bus for 5 kids who live in one isolated neighborhood. So we're trying to brainstorm some creative solutions, maybe some vans or some other kind of carpooling or cab service to reach those kids when they have a barrier, but a bus isn't warranted. The other thing that we then are doing is secondary attendance busing. This was kind of something that we wanted to tackle, as well as looking at extracurricular. We've met a couple of times, and we did kind of a similar data analysis, and we identified the areas of Southeast Iowa City, in Coralville that goes to west, and then off Benton Street that goes to west. What I want to mention about Southeast Iowa City is that it wasn't an issue for Southeast because they have attendance area busing right now, but it was an area for cities. So some of the same neighborhoods were experiencing pretty significant attendance issues at City, but not at Southeast. So that was an opportunity that we saw. But with all of the changes, some of those neighborhoods now will go to west, and there's just, I think, a fair amount of upheaval of like, what does this really mean with new secondary boundaries? I think our initial recommendation from the committee would be just to strengthen our city bus pass program, so there's a little less confusion. And some of the kids in Southeast Iowa City in particular could get to school if they had some support for a bus pass. The Coralville area at west that isn't going to Liberty would be some work to figure out how that would work because it's 2 bus systems. So anyway, that's our initial recommendations for the secondary schools on attendance. And then the other task for our committee is just looking at the activity busing. So we're collaborating with the United Way's Out of School Initiative, which is kind of a collaborative between many nonprofits in the county and United Way to look at what kids are doing when they're not in school. And so the United Way is helping us with a student survey and also with some focus groups. And we want to look at not only transportation, but what are other barriers to why kids may not be participating in extracurricular activities. We know that at Alexander and at Northwest, kids, the Kirkwood and North Central, Kirkwood going to North Central and Alexander going to Northwest, it's going to be a barrier. We've heard plenty of feedback from parents. So we would like to pilot an activity bus for the first try of next year just to see how that pans out. I think once we have real transfer numbers, we can dig into that a little more deeply because, whether we're talking about 25 or 50 or 5, what we propose for a transportation would vary. And also we really want to get the kids and parents involved with some creative problem solving with that. And I visited with Latasha briefly, and she had this great idea of maybe having an activity fair at Alexander and at Kirkwood in the spring with the 6th graders to talk about, hey, this is what you've got going at your junior high, and having an awareness of it, because I believe that that's going to be one of the barriers that we see about participating, because sometimes kids just don't know. So next steps, because I think you're expecting a final report from us at the end of February, we want to do some more attendance data analysis, particularly mid-year. We've done this in the fall because we're trying to meet a deadline, but this is the time of year where we think kids are really going to struggle to get to school. As I mentioned before, we want to brainstorm some solutions for those pockets, further develop that city bus pass program, and then compile the data that we've been working to collect for the out-of-school initiative. And then, as I mentioned too, just dig a little deeper, drill a little deeper on the kids that are transferring and what they need to be able to participate. So, was I fast enough? I was trying to zip through quickly.
Any concerns in finishing by the February?
That's a very good question. Maybe the 1st in March. So I don't know. What's your timeline? I was basing on what we did last time.
We want to be able to make the decisions to operationalize it next school year, right? So I think we all said February, but whatever works. Okay. But I think keep driving to that date and let us know if you need help or can't make it. But I think that's the main intent: is the next school year we want to be able to have at least had a chance to make that decision. So,
is that what do you think, Craig? Is that
Is there anything you need not from us tonight, Joan?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Well, thanks to you and your team. I mean, you did it before, you're going to do it again. I got full confidence, and thanks for bringing the data, because, we'd be more than happy to provide busing to everybody if financial wasn't a constraint, right? But it is. Welcome to the real world, and it'll continue to be a constraint. So having the data to show it really benefits, I think, is something we're going to need in future years, just to...
Kids can't learn if they're not there.
Right.
And so I think that's really important to keep attendance as a high priority.
I've got one just quick question. When you were talking about city bus passes, do you have any idea ballpark? Are you talking 30 passes, 100 passes, 150 passes?
Well, it depends on, we have to determine if we do the 2.5 to 3 mile range. I have I did a little chart on page 3 of that. So the number of kids, for example, living in the 2.5 to 3 mile range at City High is 78, and at West it's 25. So roughly, if we did 2.5 to 3 mile range, it would be about 100 kids. The city traditionally has given us bus passes at half price, and so I think they might be amenable to that again, so we would pursue that as a potential funding stream.
All right, thanks, Joan.
All right, thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is the physical education waiver. Steve?
Yep, and some of you may remember this. This is an issue that we've been dealing with for about the last 6 years. The district made a transition partly because of the challenge of the trimesters that we have at the high school and how we offer physical education to students, and whether it's an every other day process or an opportunity for students to take it one trimester and not the others. And so that requires a periodic waiver from the Department of Ed. Diane put this together, but in her absence tonight, Matt's going to give you a couple quick pointers on that, and we'll see if you have any questions.
Sure, and I think you would have received it from me last year. So it's an annual application we need to submit with the Department of Ed just to continue to offer physical education in the format we do. We actually go beyond the required instruction time by about 15 hours in that trimester, so students do it on an everyday format and complete that in a trimester, since we offer it that way instead of spreading it out in an every other day throughout the year. So it's really just a ask to continue our current process, but it is a process we have to go through with the Department of Ed to offer it in that format.
Okay, question. There are some students who don't take PE at all because they have a full schedule, right?
Yeah, there's different waivers that students can be granted for physical education. Some of that's full academic load. Yeah, those are different issues. This is really just making sure we're compliant with the state requirement for how we offer and teach PE.
Now, we've done this for 6 years. Do we have any data showing fitness level when the student comes in as a freshman and they take their one trimester of PE, and when they get to a senior, if there's any because kind of what Chris is talking about, it is possible for someone to go 4 years through school and just take health and not take any PE, correct?
No, they can apply for those waivers. Some of those waivers are at different times, and like your athletic exemption, those you can only qualify for that as a junior or senior. Some of the full academic load waivers have greater latitude with those, depending on when the course is available. But most likely, students would have a hard time completing all 4 years without. There are probably some provisions where that's been able to happen, but that's not happened on a very widespread basis. But we would not have any data to support what you're talking about, Phil, though, about students' physical fitness or anything to that regard. We'd have some.
Don't track that at all.
We'd have some formative assessment data for our students as they progress through the class, but.
Well, I think it'd be useful to show that, having the one trimester PE is proven to be effective as opposed to a year-round program. And I'm just saying that because I'm going in for my physical on Thursday, and I know that if I try and tell my doctor that I'm going to take 3 months of strenuous activity and take off the rest of the year, they're going to say I'm a nut.
The good news is a lot of our students are in a lot of activities, so those activities occur at different times throughout the year and that, but really it's just a function of the teaching staff kind of thinking that this was the best delivery model, that they could really have a bigger impact on lifetime fitness with giving students that intense experience for 3 months. Of course, that physical activity would need to continue you know, beyond that
and
in their
that's-
life. But that's the goal of the PE course, is
That's
to
why
teach
I'm
some
asking
lifetime
why,
fitness.
You know,
Yep.
we should track it so then we can see the effectiveness of what we're doing, because I think we're not only charged with filling their minds, but also, you know, making sure that we're turning out healthy citizens. And it was quoted on the radio today that 23% of all 13 to 19-year-olds are obese.
Did we ever track that information before we made the change? I don't. Okay, thanks.
Entertain a motion. Approve the PE waiver request.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea, and Hemingway voting nay.
All right, moving into operational work, and again, just a reminder, if we want to get to the work session, we're going to need to move through this relatively quickly, right? I'm not looking at you, Craig, specifically, but us too. So we just need to move quickly if we want to talk things like seclusion rooms tonight. So with that, the next agenda item is the annual audit report. Leslie?
So we're pleased to present to you another very good annual financial report card this year. And we have with us this evening Heidi Hobkirk, who was the team leader from RSM, formerly McGladrey, who came and was a part of our audit this year from the independent audit review. And Heidi's going to just cover some of the pieces of the audit that we feel is important for you in order to perform your fiduciary responsibility in this corporate setting that you should know about as far as our audit and the findings and so forth. I would like to publicly thank Leslie for all of his work and that of our office staff and everyone else in our colleague base that puts up with our audit team for 2 weeks with all their requests and giving them our full cooperation through this process. And I do appreciate that very much. So Heidi, go ahead and share with the board our findings.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm going to go quickly through the slides here and start with some summarized financial information looking at your revenues for the governmental funds. You did see an increase just under $8 million in the current year. As you can see from the chart, most of that came from your state sources, and that was a result of an increase in the teacher leadership money you received from the state this year. That was the majority of the increase, along with some increases in local taxes. For those same funds, looking at the expenditures, you did see an increase of about $28 million in the current year. You can tell by, by the light green column here that that was where the majority of those increases were, and that's your capital outlay expenditures. So that's related to your new elementary school, the new high school, and the multi-classroom projects going on at several elementary school. That's where those expenditures show up. So because of the timing of projects from one year to the next, that was a result of that increase. Yes.
What page are you on?
Page 4. I don't know if you have do they have the small presentation?
It's the small one?
It's the small presentation, sorry.
No problem, thank you.
The far yellow is also your debt service. That saw an increase of about $6 million. You had the sales tax revenue bonds that had their first payment within this fiscal year, and that was the cause of that increase. And then also instruction had about a $4 million increase equivalent to those grant monies that you received from the state. The next slide shows your general fund, the fund balance or your equity. It did see an increase in the current year, and that increase was all within your unassigned fund balance, which is those dollars that you can use for any purpose, unlike your restricted. And then this slide shows your school nutrition fund. It's very consistent from the prior year, so I wasn't going to touch on any of those items. Then moving on for compliance reporting, we report compliance over 2 areas. The first one's under the governmental auditing standards. That's where we look at your internal controls and report any deficiencies. In the current year, there was no significant deficiencies. But we did note one material weakness. This was related to a formula error within a spreadsheet that we found during the audit process related to capital assets, or more specifically, construction in progress. When we found the error, we discussed it with management, and they concurred and made the updates to the financial statements. So that error was corrected in the year-end financial statements, but because the internal control process didn't catch it, we did, as the auditors, it's reported as a finding or a material weakness.
What was the amount?
Do you remember the dollar amount? Yeah, I think it was over $10 million. I can give you the amount here. $11.4 million.
And you're talking the material weakness, right?
Material weakness.
So that was on an accrual basis versus a cash flow basis?
Yes. It's within the construction progress, so it was capital assets. So yes, that would be the accrual.
But it's accrual versus a cash flow basis?
And it was in the government-wide, not the fund level where you're budgeting at.
I just point that out because we know we're ahead of schedule and on budget and all that good stuff. And I understand the accrual aspect of it and how you can make that point of view, but it's not actual money, it's an accrual, right?
Correct.
Yep.
And then the single audit is where we look at your federal programs. This year you were a low-risk auditee under single audit purposes, and we tested one program, the Child Nutrition Cluster, and we look at the very specific requirements under that program. You did receive an unmodified opinion over that program, or a clean opinion, and there was also no instances of non-compliance. So the program that we tested was very clean, so I congratulate you for that and your staff. Then looking at the financial statements, you did also receive an unmodified or clean opinion on your financial statements. There were two audit adjustments, one being what we talked about earlier with the material weakness related to the construction in progress, and there was also one over cash that we proposed. And there were no uncorrected misstatements in the current year. So, and just a reminder that you do have management judgments and estimates within your CAFR. We review those and perform testing over it, and we concurred with those judgments and estimates used by management, so no concerns in that area. That is all I have for the formal presentation. I thank you for your time. I also echo Craig and thank Leslie, his staff, and everyone in the district that helps us through the audit process. We're very disruptive, so we appreciate their time and effort, and we couldn't produce the audit without all of their help. So, and then I would open it up for any questions that you may have.
So just to be clear, there was no nonconformancies, right?
Correct.
And Craig versus the past, like 5 years ago, is that an improvement or what?
Yeah, it's very much improved.
No, it looked good. I mean, it was very detailed, and I mean, there's always a couple opportunities, but we could debate those. You know what I mean? But looks great.
Thank you.
Further discussion? You don't need any action, right, Craig?
No.
It's just a review.
Just.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next topic: approval of the bond sale. Craig.
We have for you to take action on this evening the bank financing that was shared with you at your last board meeting. Jenny Blankenship is here again tonight. She's a director of PFM who we use as a financial advisor, and Jenny's coming to the mic. And she's going to share with you how the bids turned out and what our recommendation for you to consider this evening. So, Jenny, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Jenny Blankenship. In your board package, you guys all received this colorful piece of paper. This is what I'm going to be referring to if you guys want to have that in front of you. When I was here at the last meeting, essentially I talked about how for this deal, instead of going out and doing a conventional bond issue, we went ahead with a bank financing. And when we sent out the request for information back from the different banks, we had two different options that we were looking at. The first option was to go out and sell $21.1 million at one time in one note, if you will. The other option, which I'll refer to 2A and 2B, was where we were going to split that up and do a $10 million bond issuance or note and close that in this fiscal year so that we could get better pricing because it would be considered bank qualified. And then the next piece would be the remainder of that same project amount that we needed to have, and that would close in early January. So when you look at this on the first proposal, you can see, and I'm looking right here on this second area, it says option 1, we received 5 different bids. The low bid came from Key Government Finance at a 2.52%, and you can see that the high bid on that option came in at a 2.67%. If you look at, and please note that the interest cost, which is the 4th column from the left, on that Key Government Finance proposal, it's about $3,836,000 of interest, okay? The cover bid on that one is from Regions Bank. So it is good to see that we had some local participation in that, but you'll notice when you look at the little number 2, the additional proposal feedback, they were still asking for a debt service reserve fund. So that was one of the key indicators where the district could save money, is not having to do that. But either way, Key Government Finance came in at a lower interest rate. When you look at option 2 then, the first one is 2A. That's the one that will close on 12/22, and that's what you're going to authorize tonight, the $10 million. You can see that this had a low bid. There was 3 bidders. BB&T was the low bid at the $225, and interest cost is about $1.6 million. And on option 2B, which will be authorized at your January 10th board meeting, you can see that Texas Capital was the low at a 2.56. So when we compared these two to try to figure out which is a better option, option 1 or 2A and 2B, we went ahead and built that in. The blended yield on option 2A and 2B is a 2.41. So that's if you kind of combine those two. So really we compared, is the 2.41 on the blended lower than what option 1 was. Essentially, this saved about $183,000 by going with option 2A and 2B versus option 1. And more importantly than that, had we gone out and done a conventional bond, we got indications that the best rate that we would have probably received is a 2.9%. So that could probably would have cost you about $970,000 more in interest to go that route. So I feel very, very good about the rates that came in, and we would make a recommendation tonight that you go with the 2 different bank placements, one to BB&T Government Finance for the $10 million issuance, which will close on 12/22 at a 2.25%, and then the next bond issue, which will be approved at your January 10th board meeting, to Texas Capital Bank at a 2.56%, which will close on January 19th, 2017. So I'd like to entertain any questions that you may have.
On that second issue, what's the amount going to be on that one? Do we know at this time?
That par amount is $11,185,000.
Okay. And I see, just for the public to know, 3 local banks were contacted, is that correct? And one submitted a proposal?
I'm not sure of the exact number. I know it was at least 3.
Multiple?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And one other thing that I forgot to mention as I was just looking at those notes, I did want to point out and remind you guys that this is used, these money are going to be used for the new Hoover Elementary, the Lucas Elementary, the West High Phase 1 project, the new Hoover Elementary Road, and then Longfellow Elementary. So those are the projects that are related to this phase of bonds that we're doing, and then the next one that we'll have to do later on in 17. So I apologize for that.
Jenny, if I could interject here for a second into Phil's question. The local banks were offered the participant package. Midwest One was the only one locally who did submit a bid. I personally contacted several of the local banks that work closely with the school district and partner with us, and in several instances they declined a bid just because it did not fit their current portfolio, not because they weren't interested in the district's offering. But all of the local banks that we work with and that partner with us have been contacted to present proposals to invest these funds on a short-term basis as well. So we are continuing to maintain those conversations with those, and in the case of Midwest One, I had a personal conversation with Chairman Funk regarding the bid and what we would be proposing for acceptance.
Super. And you need 4 motions, Craig?
We do.
Okay. Further questions? I suggest we get on with the motions. Sorry?
I think it's just one.
Just
Just
dealing
doing
with the
one.
10 million,
2A.
but I won't be here at the next meeting, so I just wanted to give you an overview of everything.
We're just dealing with 2A, but there's 4 motions required.
Yeah, correct. That's what I was trying to make sure.
So somebody want to make the first?
Can they do all those at once, Jenny, and just use it
yes, I have
for,
other boards
you can
that
do
do
it once and
everything
we'll
at
just
once.
use it for all 4, if you're comfortable with that?
So we approve all 4 resolutions?
Right.
So I entertain a motion to approve the resolutions in the packet tonight.
There we are.
Right.
I move that we approve the resolutions in the packet tonight.
Is there a second? Tosh got the second. Further discussion? Perfect. Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and also thanks to Craig and Leslie for all of their hard work on this. So thanks so much,
Absolutely.
you guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
great night.
All right, next item on the agenda is the School Budget Review Committee application for increased enrollment.
3, 4, and 5 are very similar. We're making application to the SBRC. We do this every year, and the board considers all 3 of these every year. The first one is an application for increased enrollment. We did grow 310 students, and this provides the on-time funding for us in order to be able to educate those students because they didn't make it into last year's enrollment, and that way we can have the money now to because the students are here and we're providing that education. This is something we do each year for that on-time funding. We also have in front of you the dropout, the ELL funding for beyond 5 years. We've increased our ELL program significantly, as you know, and we had 152 students who needed ELL services beyond that 5-year funding piece. The SBRC allows us to go and recapture that expense that we use to educate those students beyond the 5-year initial funding period. And we're asking you to approve that application for us to go and recover those funds back that we spent on that process. And then the final one is our annual modified allowable growth for our dropout prevention program. And you know all the pieces that touches. And Laura is here tonight and can expand upon that program should you have questions about that. But this is an annual budget that we put together for dropout prevention. So all 3 of those need your attention this evening.
And the first one, increased enrollment, there's a recommended motion in there if somebody wants to make it.
I move we approve the SBRC application for modified supplemental amount for fiscal year 2017 enrollment in the amount of $2,051,123.
Second. For the discussion, Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, entertain the ELL motion.
Okay, I move we approve the SBRC application for modified supplemental amount for ELL instruction beyond 5 years for the 2016-17 school year in the amount of $220,972.
Second.
For the discussion, Kim, ready to vote?
Is that the ELL?
Yes.
And who was the second? I'm sorry.
Paul.
Online voting is open. I got you, Chris, and
Oh.
I haven't got Paul.
I thought I
Or
voted.
Phil, I'm sorry. I've got Phil now.
Is that me?
Nope.
I voted yes.
Yes. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, now dropout prevention.
Okay, I move, just going to read it. Resolve to authorize the Iowa City Community School District to submit a request to the School Budget Review Committee in the amount of $6,159,362 for modified supplemental amount for the purpose of dropout prevention programs.
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, thanks, Greg. That was great. Moving through that quickly. Next item on the agenda is district calendar, Steve.
So we've got 3 district calendars in front of us. One of the questions that arose at the last board meeting when we were going through the hearing was consideration for start dates after Labor Day. I did have the opportunity to meet in the interim with the Iowa City Education Association. While it's not a part of the collective bargaining agreement and it's not a mandated subject of bargaining, past practice in the district has been that we have a calendar committee that meets to define the parameters of the calendar within state statutes and district guidelines. That calendar committee consists of approximately 15 people. About 6 of them are representatives from the ICEA. Then we also have district staff, administrators, and parents from the DPO on that committee. They meet periodically to construct the calendars and then bring their recommendation forward to me, and I pass that through to you after I've ensured that it complies with all those district parameters and is cognizant of the religious calendar, which you see connected to it on the second page. What you have in front of you are 3 calendars. They meet all of those requirements of the state statutes. They comply with all of the current parameters within the district calendar setting process. They are all scheduled to start before Labor Day. The ICEA did indicate that they would certainly be willing to take a proposal to start after Labor Day forward to the calendar committee. But given the timing of the work that they have done at this point in time, they would recommend that we move forward with the 3 calendars that we have. The intent in subsequent years is to annually revisit the 2 calendars that have already been approved for any necessary revisions, and then to look at the 3rd calendar so that you'd always have a rolling set of 3 calendars. One of the things that we did discuss was a reminder that we've got lots of built-in benchmarks inside of our calendar that we don't have as much control over. We can't start before August 23rd. We match the university's spring break. We have a collective bargaining requirement for 10 weekdays over the holiday break at the winter. And then other parameters that the calendar uses as key considerations are balance of the trimesters, the role of advanced placement testing and the timing of that, and the end of the school year aligned with professional development needs for district staff, including participation in graduate programs. So those are some of the key benchmarks that they use in the process. So with that, I would be open to answering any questions that you have and see if I can provide any clarity or insight into their process.
Questions? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
I guess I got a quick, go ahead.
I was just going to motion to approve it.
Oh, okay. I met with a person with the Sudanese community last night, and he was interested in discussing with the district a possible Muslim religious holiday. If we approve this 3-year schedule, are you saying that we're locked into the first year and the other 2 are under
Yes, and then,
potential review?
right. Every year, the calendar committee will revisit those 2. If you scroll to the second page on any one of those 3 calendars, you'll see the list of.
The second page. What are you talking about?
If you open up one of the calendars,
Right.
any one of the calendars, and scroll to the second page, can you do that for me, Kristen? If you keep scrolling down, there's a set of religious holidays. They're the ones highlighted in blue.
Yep.
And those are the ones that we work with consultation of religious communities, the various religious leaders in town They provide us those dates. We take the calendars to them on an annual basis, and they review them to make sure that we have the right dates on there, because those dates do tend to change from year to year. So hopefully this is a very comprehensive list. Again, it's based on the input from the various religious leaders in the community.
And that was basically, excuse me, that was basically something that the students community also brought to my attention. I think about a year ago, I talked to Steve about incorporating that. That's why you see kind of the religious holiday calendar as you see it today. And I think the attenuation of that is trying to do it from a 3-year standpoint. So even when the planning, as you know, from a school perspective, gets into year 2, whatever the case may be, it's very clear that we have that information as far as particular religious holidays or holidays that we wouldn't want to necessarily schedule something on for those concerns.
And one of the things that we've done, again, with that 3-year rollout of that is we don't always have control over all of our calendars. I think of things like athletics and things like that are controlled by the athletic conferences. And this gives our athletic directors and our principals the opportunity to go to those meetings with those dates known well in advance, so that they can talk to those folks that have external control of events in our district in such a manner that hopefully they can argue for those things that are most important for our students.
And that's happened actually a couple of times this year and moving into next year, where we've had a couple of Jewish holidays or holy days where we either had to cancel a particular event, or we worked pretty closely with the current rabbi to make sure that it wasn't coming in conflict with any of the holidays or holidays coming up next year as well. And so that's an ongoing conversation. Our administrators have done a wonderful job as far as contacting me, and either me or them going to talk to individuals in those faith communities to ensure that we're not doing something or scheduling a particular event on a day that could be problematic.
All right, entertain a motion.
Quick question. One of the constraints was making it work with graduation at Carver Hawkeye, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, that is one of the other concerns that we have, is working with Carver Hawkeye.
Was there any thought to Hancher, or is that just not practicable?
We did, I know that the committee actually did discuss that. The folks at Hancher are open to that. One of the concerns that arose from the building principals was we used to use Hancher. It has a restricted number of tickets. So one of the things that they did discuss was they really like having more tickets. They actually had further discussions about other venues that may be in between, not quite so cavernous as Carver Hawkeye, and yet not so constrained as Hancher. And we think there may be at least one more facility that looks like that coming online in the community in the next couple of years, and that may be an option for us. And we've already reached out to that municipality to have that in their think tank moving forward.
New Hampshire is smaller than Old Hampshire.
Yeah, it is.
That's unfortunate.
And just for reference, when we were in the Old Hampshire, it was 2 tickets per family, and that created quite a constraint for families.
Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the district calendar for
district calendars.
Calendars, plural.
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Next item on the agenda is enrollment projections. Craig? And again, there's no action required here, right? So you're going to give us an executive summary and...
Correct. This one's just a summary.
Adam?
And Craig's going to pull up the executive summary there. There are 2 attachments. Any page numbers I refer to are in the full report, which is the final report attachment. I'll go through this quickly, but I do want to provide you the information you need to interpret what's in this report as it's written. On page 3 of the report, it references the data that is used in the report's creation, and that uses birth data, historical enrollment data, historical catchment data, that's live, where students live, census data, building permits. The data that the district provided to DeYoung Richter directly was geocoded birth data that we obtained from the Iowa Department of Public Health from 1998 to 2014, which is their most recently available year. Head count by grade by school. Geocoded student live location, so where they actually physically live from 2012 to the current year. Open enrollment data for the last 3 years, changes to our attendance boundaries. So all of the boundaries referenced in the report are the 2019 boundaries. And all of the boundaries used for data purposes are the 2019 boundaries. And then we've also communicated to them our elementary to secondary feeder system that was established. On page 6, there's a diagram that briefly gives an overview of the cohort survival method that was used to develop these projections. Basically, they look at every data set we have, look at second graders from a particular building, and then third graders for the following year, look at basically what percentage of that group continued on to the next year and develop a ratio based upon that. Those are developed at the building level, at the district level to inform these projections. And the report ultimately includes 2 sets of distinct projections. Attend projections, which is where students will actually physically attend, and then live projections. So attend projections, that section begins on page 17 and runs through page 25 of the report. And as I mentioned, that includes all students who physically walk into the building. This does not include any weighted numbers that we might use for certified enrollment purposes. So this is actually student head count within the buildings. That's limited to the extent that it doesn't include where the student lives. All that it's concerned with is where they're enrolled. So a student who lives over here but enrolls under a hardship waiver to a different school is included in that school for the purposes of those projections. Live projections begin on page 26 of the report and continue for the remainder of the report, and that includes all of the students who physically reside within a school's catchment zone. So again, that one's limited to the extent that it doesn't care where the students attend, only where their address is located. One of the things that you might have noticed is that the 2016-17 head count within the attend projections, and this can be found on page 21, was 13,641 students district-wide. The 2016-17 live count, which is our geocoded students, where their actual residence location is only 13,197. That's about a 3.3% difference. The big reason there is that the LIB projections do not include open enrollment into the district. By definition, they don't live in one of our catchment zones, so they're not counted in the catchment zone. And it also doesn't include students whose addresses can't be geocoded. So we have 2 separate services that we use for geocoding. One is Guide K-12, which the district subscribes to. Another is Texas A&M University, which provides it to us for free. And students who can't be geocoded by either service, that could be that their address is simply wrong. It could be that it's a new subdivision that doesn't exist in GIS databases. There are a number of possibilities, isn't included in that count. So the live counts are always lower than the head count data. Just a couple highlights that I want to mention. I know that you've had a chance to take a look and probably notice some of these trends. Actually, before I get to the highlights, one brief mention. There are, within each of the projection sets, attend and live, there are low, moderate, high, and recommended. Those are based primarily on factors including interest rates, whether they were to skyrocket, inflation, if that were to skyrocket or drop. Well, it can't really drop much at this point. Housing starts, so whether the housing market picks up or declines, and then also birth data, whether birth rates increase or decrease, result in those 3 projections. The recommended projection is based upon the district's recent history, and that is obviously the recommended solution on the part of the demographer. And so that's the one that, at least when I'm looking at it, I look most closely at. But there is a range. So looking at pages 20 through 25, the 10-year projections range in terms of attend from a decrease of 407 students in the low scenario to an increase of 5,271 students in the high scenario. Recommended is 2,238. That's very close to our past 10 years historical change, which is plus 2,288. So the attend projections show that we'd be very similar over the coming 10 years to what we've been for the past 10 years. The growth isn't even throughout that time period. It's more rapid in the first 6 years and then declines. It doesn't decline, but it slows down. The growth rate slows down. The live projections, and looking at pages 32 through 38, again, the low scenario would be a decrease of 1,368 students. The high, an increase of 4,926. Recommended is an increase of 1,693. Again, that number is going to be lower because it leaves out some students. And the data isn't directly comparable because it's based on a different historical data set. We don't have as much lived data historically. We only have 5 years. The demographers would prefer 10. Detailed projections for live data are provided for each catchment area, and that includes elementary, an index of all of those on page 40, and then secondary index on page 87. Some of the highlights that jump out are an expectation of very rapid growth within the Penn catchment area in particular, and then fairly rapid growth at Van Allen, Alexander, Horn, Twain catchment zones. And then overall, growth is projected in 15 of our 20 elementary catchment zones. So we don't have a lot of declines, and we have no steep declines in any of our elementary zones. At the secondary, growth is projected in all three, so City, Southeast, North Central, Liberty, and Northwest West. Growth is most rapid in Liberty, North Central, more moderate in West Northwest, and then slow growth, but growth still projected in the City Southeast catchment. You might notice we do not have building level attend projections, and this is something that we worked hard to figure out if there was a way that it could be done. The demographers determined that it couldn't, and that was based upon our wholesale changes of attendance zones by and large, so there wasn't the historical data that they needed to do the cohort survival analysis. And evidence for that can actually be seen based upon our last projections, which were very accurate on the whole, 1.3% off. But Alexander and Wood in particular were off by 47 and 21% respectively, even though we provided as much data as possible about where we expected students to go. Using cohort survival wasn't a good transition into changed attendance zone areas. That said, attend projections can be extrapolated from the building level to the building level from the live data. It's a less sophisticated approach, but basically involves weighting based upon the discrepancy between the attend projections district-wide versus the live projections by catchment zone. So that's something that we can generate, but again, it would be a less sophisticated analysis. But that would be a way to reach some attend projection for those buildings. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Quick question. So, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
And maybe this is more of an enrollment report question, so you just tell me if it is, but not projections question, but we've got 500 kids that enrolled out of the district this year. So it would be helpful to know what regions those are from, if there's any kind of trends in that.
And that's not data that, not data that, as you expected, not data that I collected as part of this work. It is data that we can make available through geocoding those addresses, just like we've done with the data, birth data, for instance.
Well, it's generally part of the demographics report, right, Steve? And we get that, February-ish?
First or second meeting in February, one of those two.
I was going to follow up on what you said about how the rate of growth is in the first 5 years steeper than in later. Is that partly a result of that built into the first 5 years, there's more of an ability to assess growth and development planned as opposed to 5 to 10 years out?
You know,
I don't even know if they try to assess that.
Yep, I don't want to speak, obviously, I don't want to speak for how the demographers put all the data together, but I've looked at that pretty closely, and it looks like a couple of things. One is when you look at the size of our existing classes, we have some very large classes that are maybe larger than would be expected based on the trend line for the district that would be leaving the district around that time. So that's something that can result in that lower growth rate a little bit. Birth data comes into play. Again, they have birth data going all the way to 2014. Births are increasing, but the increase moderates a little bit in the recent years. So that's something that may also contribute. It's tough to know exactly, though, whether there are limitations, looking, for instance, at housing starts and building
5
permits.
years out, too, the birth data, you don't have birth data for, the kindergarten class 6 years from now.
Yep, correct.
Yeah.
So I have only one request that I made in work session, and that is to generate a one-page comparison of enrollment versus school capacity, similar to what we did with boundaries and.
And we're working on that right now.
Yep.
We had talked earlier about maybe having somebody from DeYoung Richter here to answer some questions about how they do it. Is that?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. That's not part of our contract with them right now, so that'd be a cost above and beyond, but we can definitely bring somebody in. They have made that available to us in the past. We just have elected not to incur that expense.
You know how much it would be?
It's about $5,000 to bring someone here.
All right, any other discussion on this? Again, just trying to get to as many topics tonight as we can. All right, great, thanks, Adam. Moving on to Appendix 9. Now, Dwayne, I'm going to suggest this is one of the more simple updates I've ever seen, and I wonder if there's just any questions from directors, and maybe we should get on with approving it, because
it's fine by me. I've been losing my voice.
There's a lot of substantial completions, and it's just very straightforward.
Wow, yeah.
Any questions for Dwayne on Appendix 9? I entertain a motion.
I would move that we approve the Appendix 9 items as presented.
Is there a second? Paul, further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, next agenda is items withdrawn from consent. I think number 9, Phil?
Yes, and that was mainly a brief discussion with the superintendent before the meeting started, and it pertained to the gentleman who was here on the chess club and his concerns about being able to use it free. And I was wondering, Steve, if you can just kind of explain the brief conversation we had as far as when they can use the elementary schools free and when there's a cost.
Sure. We have 3 different categories of groups in the community. We have mission partners, we have 501c3 organizations, and we have for-profit institutions. And so when somebody comes to us and wants to rent one of our facilities, we drop them into one of those 3 categories based on their self-identification. And that determines whether or not there is a rental fee applied to them to use our facilities. For someone who is a mission partner or a 501c3, there are rarely rental costs associated with the use of district facilities. And then we look at the time they want to use the district facilities. And if they're able to schedule their event during a time when our buildings are regularly staffed, so think afternoons and evenings at our elementary schools, afternoons, evenings, and some weekends at our high schools, then there are no additional variable costs for the district to have them in the facility, and so they don't incur any additional costs for that. There are times when there are organizations that would like to use our facilities and they're not open. We don't have anyone in there from a supervisory or custodial standpoint. And then in particular for those mission partners and those 501c3s, they can use those facilities during those times that they're not open, and their only cost is the variable cost to the district of having somebody on site to provide that supervision and support for their activities while they're in there. And so the earlier conversation that we had about the chess tournament, that would be a building that's not currently open on the weekends, and so no rental fee for them to use the facility. Obviously, it's our kids, and they're a nonprofit organization, and then their only cost then is the time that would be required to have somebody on site to provide support for them.
Right, so, but if they wanted to move that venue to a secondary school that had Saturday
Sure.
janitorial services, they could do it free of charge.
Sure, or an afternoon or an evening at an elementary school that's already staffed, yes.
So the solution there may just be scheduling, trying to
Yep.
schedule at a time.
Schedule or location may be the issue there that could resolve that for them.
And the reason I brought it up is that the Girl Scouts are using our facilities for free, not singling out the Girl Scouts, but just it lended itself to the conversation. So I move that we approve the, or do you want to say something, Paul?
I just wanted to clarify your point. So they could use the secondary school for 8 hours, right, for free? If someone was there.
Yeah, presuming that we've got it staffed, which
Now, if the
most
chess club
weekends.
goes 10 hours, if the tournament goes 10 hours, then there's the 2 hours that
Sure.
they have to pay.
Right, if there's a variable cost that's above and beyond our current staffing, right, that would be the only cost they would pay.
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve consent agenda item 9.
Second. Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, moving on to agenda setting. First thing on agenda setting is suggest we plan a work session on the 10th to include facilities master plan and GO bond and anything we might not get to tonight. Hopefully we get
Sorry,
through.
can you repeat that?
Can I suggest that on the 10th, January 10th, we plan a work session?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Facilities master plan, GO bond, and any carryover items. We said we'd take away with Steve to look at dates for a student-based work session, but we'll take that away. And
Yes, we're already working on that.
After that, you got on the 10th board meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to put the isolation boxes on the board meeting for the 10th.
So it'll be timeout rooms.
Maybe this is a parking lot item, depending on how full we end up, what ends up getting carried over to the 10th. But I'd like to, at some point, kind of do a mid-year checkup with how we're doing with board norms that we agreed on during the board retreat in the fall. I know I think we're pushing for a board retreat in the spring. Is that correct?
Well, why don't we, next agenda setting, talk board retreat?
Okay.
It's always smart to do it in the winter when it's not very nice out.
Sure. Should just throw that in the parking lot item. Maybe we
Yeah, we
tackle
can put it on
then.
agenda setting.
Yeah.
All right, other items?
We're talking about the board meeting, not the work session?
Well, this would just be an agenda setting item that we talk on the 10th.
But I mean, we're talking about the agenda for the January 10th board meeting as
Yes,
opposed
yes,
to the
right.
work
I
session.
understand the
on
question
the
now,
10th.
yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Further discussion on agendas?
At
Entertain.
some point, I am interested, I don't know, again, if this would be work session or what, but if we could get a report about the district's substitutes in classrooms, and particularly I'm interested in unfilled slots of substitutes and at the different schools. Because what I'm hearing from people is that there's more of a absence of, or more of a situation where substitute slots are not filled at high FRL schools. And I don't know if that's correct or not. That's what I'm hearing, and I'd just like to hear some data on it.
So how about we'll chat with Steve and search for some dates on what makes sense?
We actually track that on a pretty regular basis. That's an ongoing topic of conversation with the ICEA at our monthly leadership meetings. And so I think essentially when you have room on the schedule, Jane would be ready to bring that data forward because we're tracking it regularly.
We get a monthly report right now at the end of each month of what our fill rates
Let's
are.
just add it to the next work session
Sure.
then. And
Yep, we can
yeah.
put that on there.
Okay.
And that's not urgent, so if we don't get to it,
We can put it
move
last if it carries over or something, you know?
And we'll just have more updated data.
President Lynch, the task force, we were supposed to come December today, but we postponed it because of the nature of the agenda. I was assuming we could do, the climate survey, the climate survey task force. Can we look at not necessarily January 10th, but 24th?
Work session or board meeting?
Board meeting.
Okay, so put that on the 24th?
Yeah, I just wanted to, if they know now, I can let them know ahead of time for all the people that
They
were
can.
part of it.
Okay. All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh,
Do you want something, Chris? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize we had moved past the work session agenda. I thought we were still talking about the meeting agenda.
Okay, go
There's
ahead.
a couple of things in our agenda parking lot, which makes me laugh, that maybe I would like to keep on the work session agenda. Those first two items, the FMP cost to Hoover to condition to stay open, and the computer policy, safety, and cell phone use policy. I'd put those on the work session agenda if I could. And again, maybe the second one.
What was the first topic?
The first one, cost to get Hoover to condition to stay open, just the cost of keeping it open if we did want
That
to
would
keep
fit
it
in
open.
the facilities master plan, right?
That would fit under the, well, I guess so. But I mean, are we going to have that information for that
I just
time?
wanted to make sure I understood.
But the cell phone use policy and computer policy is something that's been brought up before. I just don't want it to disappear.
So work session.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. All right. Any further conversation on agenda setting? Before we adjourn, let's get back to the back quick tonight so we can get going as fast as we could, if that's all right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
You both will say aye, loud and big.
Yeah.